Blog Talk Radio.
Will I ever see you again?
I dearly hope so, my prince. There is so much more I meant to tell you. Everything you know is about to change.
American Daily Review.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
When America needed them most, two men rose to the occasion. Doug Gibbs of Constitution Radio and PoliticalPistachio.com. Jasnius of PoliticalPistachio.com, Constitution Radio, and the Hard Starboard Radio Network. This is American Daily Review on blogtalkradio.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, last night when I spoke with you about the fall of Rome, I knew at that moment that troops of the United States and our allies were crossing the Channel in another and greater operation. It has come to pass with success thus far. And so, in this poignant hour, I ask you to join with me in prayer Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity. Lead them straight and true. Give strength to their arms, stoutness to their hearts, steadfastness in their faith. They will need thy blessings. Their road will be long and hard. For the enemy is strong. He may hurl back our forces. Success may not come with rushing speed, but we shall return again and again. And we know that by thy grace and by the righteousness of our cause, our sons will triumph. They will be sore tried by night and by day, without rest, until the victory is won. The darkness will be rent by noise and flame. Men's souls will be shaken with the violences of war. For these men are lately drawn from the ways of peace. They fight not for the lust of conquest. They fight to end conquest. They fight to liberate. They fight to let justice arise and tolerance and goodwill among all thy people. They yearn but for the end of battle, for their return to the haven of home. Some will never return. Embrace these, Father, and receive them, thy heroic servants, into thy kingdom. And for us at home, fathers, mothers, children, wives, sisters, and brothers of brave men overseas, whose thoughts and prayers are ever with them, help us, Almighty God, to rededicate ourselves in renewed faith in Thee in this hour of great sacrifice. Many people have urged that I call the nation into a single day of special prayer. But because the road is long and the desire is great, I ask that our people devote themselves in a continuance of prayer. As we rise to each new day, and again when each day is spent, let words of prayer be on our lips, invoking thy help to our efforts. Give us strength, too, strengthen our daily tasks, to redouble the contributions we make in the physical and the material support of our armed forces. And let our hearts be stout, to wait out the long travail, to bear sorrows that may come, to impart our courage unto our sons, wheresoever they may be. And, O Lord, give us faith. Give us faith in Thee, faith in our sons, faith in each other, faith in our united crusade. Let not the keenness of our spirit ever be dulled. Let not the impacts of temporary events, of temporal matters of but fleeting moment, let not these deter us in our unconquerable purpose. With thy blessing, we shall prevail over the unholy forces of our enemy. Help us to conquer the apostles of greed and racial arrogances. Lead us to the saving of our country, and with our sister nations into a world unity that will spell a sure peace, a peace invulnerable to the schemings of unworthy men, and a peace that will let all men live in freedom, reaping the just rewards of their honest toil. Thy will be done, Almighty God. Amen.
You've got to be kidding me. You're it? You're the black person.
No, Jasmius. A sound check. 3, 2, 1. Ah! Did that work? Hey, chat room denizens, did you hear any of that, or do we have to go through the whole Verizon wireless routine? Can you hear me now? Crap! Can you hear me now? Damn! Oh, good, you can hear me. Good. Oh, leading the show says, I can hear today! And you just burst my eardrums. Well, that was kind of the idea. If subtlety won't work, then a more direct route has to be affected. And for those of you wondering what I'm talking about, just go to the show page at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network and see where the June 5th podcast isn't. That's all you really need to know. Welcome to American Daily Review, ladies and gentlemen, the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, the fastest 3 hours in radio, contra Rush Limbaugh. Beginning here at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, going for the next 3 hours, the last hour, over at KC. Boy, I tell you what, habits are hard to break. KMET1490am.com for the flagship program of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And, of course, today is June the 6th, 2015, and something kind of important took place 71 years ago today. So that is why I replayed for all of you Franklin Delano Roosevelt's D-Day prayer speech. I just thought it was appropriate. In fact, when I came into my blogcasting studio this morning, and after the computer blue screened, that's why it's working so well now. Better to get that stuff out of the way than just as Constitution Radio is coming on the air. That won't happen again, folks. That really was a freak happenstance. So, and no, I'm not the freak that made it happenstance. So don't go there. But I happened to notice June the 6th, so I took a look around, rummaged around YouTube, and found the FDR D-Day prayer speech. And so I thought, well, what would be a more appropriate occasion than June the 6th? D-Day Day, the 71st anniversary of D-Day. So that's what that was all about. I am, of course, Jasmius, one of your co-hosts for the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, all 3 hours. I host the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast, and people can actually hear me at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Guest call-in number here, in case you should be so inclined, 646-595-4520. That's 646-595-4520. My email address, jasmius@comcast.net. I don't know if I have the liberty to actually disclose my other co-host's email address. I'll leave that to him if he so chooses, although so many people are on his email list that it probably isn't all that much of a secret. And the chat room is open, and oh my goodness gracious, oh my goodness gracious, it is, the chat room is rocking, folks. You need to get in here. I mean, the comments are just whizzing by. I mean, it's like watching the streaks of starlight when you're in a starship in warp drive. It's just you won't be able to keep up with it. You got to jump in. It's like getting on the freeway in the movie I, Robot. You're not going to be able to ease your way in. You just got to jump in and hope you don't get run off the road, run over. This is a freeway, folks, that does not have crosswalks. Let's just leave it at that. And, of course, now there's somebody in the chat room who was bragging about his lunch yet again. So we might as well let him do it on the air.
On the air. How do I sound?
Oh, not bad. Not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Better than the phone?
Well, I mean, why not adapt the mode that will be going out over the hallowed airwaves of KMET 1490 AM?
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm in the studio, and I got here actually early this morning because we're working on a video series and doing some videos. Last Sunday, I had the opportunity to spend some time with a young videographer who wants to see if he can help. And Glenn, the president of the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party, who created this studio for our use, says, yeah, we can add a television studio portion to it. Why not? And he has a kick-butt camera, so why not? So, you know, I was tempted to call the new video series the Gibbs Pocket, but
yeah, but then I would be making royalties for the rest of my life. So why would you want to do something like that?
No, actually, what we're looking at is we got 3 kinds of videos we're looking at. Short Tea Party Minute style. I say Tea Party Minute. It's not going to be a Tea Party video, but Tea Party Minute, they've got this little minute thing they do where they come on, they hammer you with this really great information, and they're done. So we want to do something like that. We want to do a little bit of man on the street kind of stuff, and then also a show, I guess, that would rival what you have on Fox and One America. My good friend Rick Amato over there at One America News got canceled.
He did.
Yeah, he did, and they replaced him with Tommy Lauren, I think is her name. Well, and she's this, this young blonde that, suicide blonde, died by her own hands, and she's not painful to look at, and so therefore, but she reads everything, and you could tell she's reading. So her delivery is, for lack of a better way of putting it, could be better, but I'm sure they're getting all the young men. Yeah. Well, she hesitates a little bit, things like that, but I'm sure she'll get better. But I'm sure they have the males in their 20s crowd watching.
Which was probably the idea, at least for now.
Yeah, I don't think she's the sharpest tool in the shed, but she does an okay job. I watched, a couple shows, but I'm not going to return to watch. Rick, I didn't like his delivery or the way he set up the show, but he's sharp. He knew his stuff. His delivery was much better than Tommy's. I've known Rick for a long time. In fact, Rick Amato, a lot of people don't know this. He was the one that really gave me my first opportunity to be behind a mic in an AM radio studio, because he has a little bit of both show on KCBQ down in La Jolla, California, and I guest hosted for him a couple times. And that's kind of what gave me the AM bug. It was after that I started looking around and found KCAA. And then since then, after 3.5 years on KCAA, we've moved to KMET. But so Rick Amato is actually a large part of the reason why I wound up getting into the AM radio. And the thing is, I've got a fan here in Beaumont that's always saying, gosh, Doug, you're better than Rick, you're better than this guy, you're better than that guy, you should have a TV show. Well, you don't just call up Fox News and have I got a show for you. It just doesn't work that way. So I got to thinking about it and watching these shows. Why not create a 5 or a 10-minute show for a while that is set up studio style, like what you see on TV, where I'm going through a couple of things, just me, the mic and the camera, and see how it works out. And if it gets a lot of hits, and if someone takes notice, that could be another rumble, a harmonic trimmer, whatever you want to call it.
New on-ramp.
And yeah, well, the thing is, I've been wanting to do video for a while, but as sharp as I am on, say, the Constitution, technology, not so much. And so, pulling this all together and having the right people around me and equipment and the location now, we've got this studio. I've got, I told Glenn about this, and he's like, yeah, I could go get this equipment. I'm not asking you to buy stuff, but cool, thank you. I'm here to tell you, this studio that he's created, because KMET is a much smaller station than KCAA. They don't have a studio like KCAA does. So in order to, and so what the way they've always done shows is people Skype in, or it's syndicated stuff, or people produce them at separate locations, and they didn't really have live video. COG, by the way, has a recommendation for me in the chat room. I'm afraid to see what these two words are going to be.
So in other words, what you're saying is that for those of you who have seen this direct TV commercial, Glenn is the supermodel, super bikini model, and you're the horse.
I wouldn't put it that way, but okay.
Okay, well, you can be the supermodel and Glenn can be the horse. I don't care.
No. I've got a face for radio. Fortunately, I can pull off television, but and in my opinion, I'm kind of overweight and all that. And some people say, "No, you're fine." I said, "No. Trust me, I used to be a skinny little rail. I look at myself now. Who's that man in my old body? My new body, whatever. I've added an extra person since I was a young man. But
see, well, that underscores why we got to get to the point where I can afford to get down there, so that because next to me you would look skinny. Let's just put it that way. You would say, "Wow, Doug, you lost weight. Hey, who's this fat slob?"
I'm about 215. But anyway, getting back to the whole point here is there's a lot of good things on the horizon. I got a lot of people who the tabletop news. I've gotten to the point where I'm making enough profit on it now, where I'm helping pay the goat's the real star. Thanks, Yoji. He's talking about the commercial with the horse and the gal. But anyway, we got tabletop news is starting to make a little bit of a profit, enough to the point where for the last 3 weeks I've given my wife some money for bills, and her response was something like, finally.
Yeah, I trust me, my friend. I can eminently identify with her feelings.
Yeah. Well, I'm making enough now where we're no longer pulling out of savings. Still don't have health insurance or anything like that. Don't let word get out. I don't want to be fined. But, yeah, like I really care.
Well, hey, you know what? The individual mandate might just end up getting repealed. So you never know.
The way we're looking. Yeah. Well, anyway, so there's a lot of great things on the horizon. But before we get rolling on the stories, let's go through Constitution Corner. This week I wrote about nullification. And the reason why I wrote about nullification is I was at a meeting last Monday night, and our speaker, and I got a chance to spend some time talking to him and gave him copies of all my books, was Steve Stockman, Congressman Steve Stockman. He was the one who took, Texas, exactly. He took Ron Paul's seat. He had also been a congressman back in the 90s during the Gingrich thing. So he has served 2 terms, but, kind of in Grover Cleveland style where they're separated by years. And first of all, let me say this about Steve Stockman. He is in continuous joke mode. I mean, but he's funny, but it's like, okay, now let's talk serious for a second. And then he, even says a joke about that. But so he is in continuous joke mode. But that said, he's one of the sharper tools in the shed when it comes to representatives in Congress. I've met a few of them, and most of them have me scratching my head, and the rest of them have me defecating. So, Steve Stockman was kind of a breath of fresh air. Interestingly enough, he's getting ready to come to California from Texas because he's picked up employment at USC. Yes, that is the belly of the beast, University of Southern California. Why they would want him, a very conservative congressman, I have no clue. But nonetheless, after the meeting, this gentleman walks up to me and he says, "Hi, my name is, and I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I've heard about you. I've always wanted to talk to you about a few things." And so, as is typical with me, I wound up talking to him in the parking lot for hours and hours and hours, and got home like 1:30 in the morning, to my wife's not surprise. And one part of our conversations, I brought up nullification. After I explained it to him, he says, "Wow, that's awesome. Why don't the states use it?" Well, one of 3 reasons. Either they don't understand it or don't know they've got that power, or 2, they are fearful or too fearful to try, or they know that they're going to get slapped down with the courts and federal tyranny or whatever, or they're a part of the problem. They completely love this big government thing, and they're, they like getting money from the federal government, even though they gave them that money in the first place. I still have yet to understand that. We give the federal government, $10, we get back $2, and we're excited about it. Why are we giving them the money in the first place? But anyway, so I'm explaining to them what nullification is, and so I wanted to go over that a little bit with this audience. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's always good to continue to hammer on things so people really have it down. Nullification, it's been wrongly blamed as the cause between the war between the states, and in reality, because everybody says, well, South Carolina nullified. No, they didn't. They seceded. Actually, the nullification was by Wisconsin. And when I say that, people, what? Yeah, Wisconsin. And actually, Wisconsin was nullifying in a wrong manner. They were nullifying the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, not because they felt it was unconstitutional, but because they felt it was unjust. and you've got the southern states going, okay, so we've got a completely constitutional law being nullified. The federal government's doing nothing about it, and then here comes some guy named Lincoln who wins the presidency with ease without even being on the ballots in the South. No wonder they seceded. But anyway, so nullification is a concept that's not specifically mentioned in the United States Constitution. It's not discussed, but it exists based on the parameters that exist in the Constitution. Being the creators of the Constitution, the states have the final authority regarding determining the constitutionality of a federal law or action. In other words, they are the final arbiters of the Constitution, and they are voluntary members of this union. They created this contract, and they're voluntarily members of this union as a result. And if a state chooses to nullify, a state simply refuses to implement the law in question or invalidate the federal law, because the federal law, if it's unconstitutional, wasn't authorized to become law in the first place. It's illegal. So how can a state be required to put into place an illegal law? Thomas Jefferson addressed nullification in his draft of the Kentucky Resolutions of 1798, where he wrote, where powers are assumed which have not been delegated, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy. And the federal courts have long rejected the concept of nullification. Of course, if you want to get out of jury duty, you can also just bring up jury nullification. You'll get thrown out of there faster than not also. But, well, actually, that's not always true. A friend of mine tried that just recently. The other day, he had jury duty, and he brought up jury nullification. I said, oh, okay. He came to me and said, hey, I thought you said get me out. I said, hey, you're the first time I've ever heard where you didn't. So I got another way for you to get out of it. And he says, oh, yeah, how? It says, you look, when they ask you about the defendant, you say, well, look at the guy. He's obviously guilty. You'll be thrown out, trust me. But anyway.
Yeah, I've developed that to a well-honed art in science. So I've done it twice now, and it always works.
My wife used to be able to get out of jury duty really easily, and I used to be shocked by the fact that she got jury duty notices more than me. But then she naturalized, and she had no way to get out of it. You think about this. A woman on a green card who's not eligible was getting more jury duty notices than me, and the only time I was getting jury duty notices is when I was working for a city. While I was working for that city every year, like clockwork. Then when I was no longer working for the city, haven't had one since. But
never know.
But
anyway,
I
was just gonna say, I've that post on nullification inspired me to put up a post. It was based on a story about how the states are spending almost $1 billion. They're being forced to spend almost $1 billion to enforce Obamacare, and that's part of $35 billion and 75.5 million paperwork hours that state and local governments are being forced to expend across the board, and that led me to, and in fact I found a quote, and I don't know if it's too long for this particular circumstance, but it nullification, Article 5 convention, and sometimes even bloody revolution. That's what Thomas Jefferson anticipated, and he
anticipated we'd have a bloody revolution every 20 years,
every generation.
Yeah.
This quote, I'll try to get through it quickly. Societies exist under the three forms sufficiently distinguishable: without government, under governments wherein the will of everyone has a just influence, as is the case in England in a slight degree, and in our states in a great one; and 3, under governments of force, as is the case in all monarchies and in most of the other republics. Interesting little addition there. To have an idea of the curse of existence under these last, they must be seen. It is a government of wolves over sheep. This is starting to sound familiar, folks? It is a problem not clear in my mind that the first condition is not the best, but that's being no government. But I believe it to be inconsistent with any great degree of population. The second state has a great deal of good in it, that being governments where the will of the people has a just influence. Let's see. The mass of mankind under that enjoys a precious degree of liberty and happiness. It has its evils too, the principal of which is the turbulence to which it is subject. But weigh this against the oppressions of monarchy, and it becomes nothing. Malo periculosum libertatem quam quietum servituditum, or Latin, that's Latin for I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. Even this evil is productive of good. It prevents the degeneracy of government and nourishes a general attention to the public affairs. I hold it that a little rebellion now and then is a good thing, and as necessary in the political world as storms in the physical. Unsuccessful rebellions indeed generally establish the encroachments on the rights of the people which have produced them, like the French Revolution. An observation of this truth should render honest Republican small r governors so mild in their punishment of rebellions as not to discourage them too much. It is a medicine necessary for the sound health of government. Or nullification.
Very well put.
Well, it's
Thomas Jefferson after all.
Yeah, how could it be any better put?
Yeah, well, the problem is that the federal government thinks that they are supreme. They are supreme over everything, even if they don't have the authority to do it. They're supreme.
Yeah, it's totally bass-ackwards, which is why I also put that YouTube video of the time travel episode of Family Guy where they were sucking up their own vomit. I thought that illustrated it quite well.
Yeah, well, luckily I finished eating already.
Enchiladas would be really bad for that.
Well, what nullification does is it recognizes that the states are the authors of the Constitution, and that, as I mentioned earlier, they are voluntary members of the Union. And just like if you had a contract with a builder to add a room to your house, you wrote that contract, and you know what that contractor is allowed to do because you put it in writing. You understand it, and it's your call on if they are acting in a manner that they shouldn't, and firing them or throwing them off your property or putting them back on track on what they're supposed to be doing or whatnot. And that includes not paying them. And so as the designers of the government, that's what the states are. And they have the final authority to determine the limits of the power of the government they created. The states, not the federal judges, the states are the final voice, the final arbiters in regards to the extent of the federal government's power. And as the final arbiters of the United States Constitution, the states may reject or nullify federal laws that the states believe are beyond the federal government's constitutional powers. And someone says, yeah, but Doug, you say the states. Who's the states? Are you going to trust those state legislatures? Well, first of all, I live in California, so yeah, we are kind of suspect of our state government more so than anybody. But that said, how does the Constitution begin? We, the people of the United States. The states are you. You operate through your states. If your state's out of control, if you have the wrong people in there, that's nobody's fault but your own.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, in California, easier said than done. But you know what? California in the 60s was actually worse off than it is now, and it got turned around and actually became what we consider today a red state. And one man did it.
Yep.
Ronald Reagan. All right.
Reagan.
Any further comments before we move on?
Not other than that it's going to take, like just yesterday, former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay was joined the chorus, a growing chorus of conservatives who are saying that if the Supreme Court tries to enforce or to force homosexual marriage on the country, that it'll be time for civil disobedience. Well, it's time for civil disobedience across the board.
Well, it was civil disobedience 6 years ago, but it's just
I can't argue with that. but it's and nullification would be part of that. Article 5 Convention, Republic Review. I mean that's the peaceful revolution that America desperately needs. because the other side's not going to back off. So I mean, there has to be push back, and it will be resisted. But that's the only way to do it, short of bloody revolution. And remember, the federal government still has some number of nuclear weapons. So just pointing that out for everybody.
Yeah. It's kind of a fascinating tidbit out there. Yeah. Now, the next story, story number 14, is actually something I wrote about, and I just found it fascinating, and I thought it was worth bringing up because it really characterizes the media quite well. And I'm talking about Bob Schieffer. I guess Bob Schieffer's on his way out. He's finally deciding to retire, stunningly.
Yeah, well, take one look at him, and you can kind of understand why.
Oh.
No, I just mean he looks 90 years older than God. He looks older than George Soros, and Soros is only 84 years older than God. So, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the changing of the guard kind of thing. Maybe that'll be Brian Williams' next billet.
Well, when Bob Schieffer was born, Brian Williams was there.
Covering it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bob Schieffer has hosted Face the Nation for 24 years. He's been with CBS News almost as long as I've been alive, and I've got 6 grandkids.
Yeah, 1969 is when he started with CBS News.
Right, exactly. And what caught my attention is he said something very fascinating to me, and it kind of reminded me of what's that pastor's name? Franklin Graham. Franklin Graham one time said, "Well, I don't know who the Tea Party is." But he said that as he was making recommendations for us to start doing what the Tea Party's been trying to do for the last 8 years. So it kind of cracked me up. It's like, dude, you're half a dozen years too late. But anyway, so Bob Schieffer in an interview says, well, we don't know where people get their news. But what we do know is they're bombarded with information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Most of the information is wrong, and some of it is wrong on purpose. It is our job, I think, in mainstream journalism to try to cut through this mall of information and tell people what we think is relevant and what they need to know. That is the job of the journalist, and I have to say it's harder and harder. Later on in the article, I can't remember the exact words off the top of my head. I'll have to find it real quick. But he basically said something along the line of that these people that are reporting these news, they're not collegiately trained. Oh, here it is. Schieffer mentioned part of the problem is internet anonymity, but also by a lack of collegiality. In other words, only those properly trained and indoctrinated by the liberal left collegiate community should be reporting the news.
Yeah, that college community that has co-eds dragging mattresses around and making sex videos.
Yeah, that's the one.
That college community. It's on political. I didn't post a link to it, folks. Don't panic. But I mean, it's.
Yeah, some of your images, I still have nightmares over.
We really have lost our minds. And there's some who I've talked about this week on Hard Starboard Radio. Some people are of the opinion that this might finally be turning the tide against political correctness. Well, knock wood on that. The left eating its own and so forth. But this just reflects. There's a term for this kind of thing that Bob Schieffer is unwittingly describing. And it was coined several years ago, and it's known as existential closure. and what that means, folks, in case you're not familiar with the term, is that a group of people cloister together, don't listen to anybody else. Don't listen to countervailing opinions. I mean, now they call it trigger zones and safe zones and things like that, trigger issues. And so they don't know what anybody else thinks but people in their own little cloistered group, and they live in a bubble. And they never go outside that. It's like Logan's Run. It's like a media version of Logan's Run, where everybody lives in this little city, nobody goes outside of it, and then someone from that city finally goes outside and they discover, hey, wait a minute, there's a whole world out here. I thought it was just us. And that's what Bob Schieffer's talking about. He's never come out of that bubble.
Well, I think it even goes a little bit further in the sense of how you want to explain this is, how about the Truman Show, where it's their job to make sure you're fooled, that you don't know what's going on. They're going to go out of their way to make sure you as a viewer only know your universe, your bubble, and that's it. You're not even willing to take a step off the beach and hop in the boat because there's no need to. You already know all what's out there. You've been told, and hey, it's not good. You don't want to go too far outside your bubble. Stay within your bubble, and you'll be safe.
Oh, yeah, well, he says it right here. It is our job, I think, in mainstream journalism to cut through this mall of information and tell people what we think is relevant in what they need to know. And they had that monopoly. They had that absolute control until Rush Limbaugh came along, talk radio, and then Fox News, and then the Internet, and now that monopoly, it's still dominant, but it's not a monopoly. People can get information from other sources. The truth can get out, and it is out there.
And this is what we mean when we call these people elitists.
Mm-hmm.
When we say elitists, we don't mean the upper echelon who has lots of money. We mean people who think they're above all of you. And you're too stupid to figure it out. But don't worry, they'll figure it out for you and explain it to you so that you're not lost.
Or that or more accurately, that you don't depart from the path on which they intend for you to tread.
Yeah. In other words, they consider themselves engineers.
The wide path that leads to destruction, to get all biblical on your heinies. And rather than
you listen to way too much Weird Al Yankovic.
What? I mixed the gospel and Weird Al. Boy, I bet nobody's ever done that before. I really am.
Yeah. Well, I'm just waiting for the Star Trek reference. Okay, next story.
The show is young, my friend. The show is young.
Story number 13: drugging our veterans. You put this story on Political Pistachio, titled "VA Official Admits System Turning Veterans into Drug Addicts." Now. This is, I know it's a stunner. James O'Keefe is the one that revealed this.
Project Veritas.
This guy is awesome, man.
Man.
I almost aspire to be like him, incredible. Go ahead, tell everybody what this is all about.
Well, award-winning journalist and New York Times best-selling author James O'Keefe has released another troubling and powerful new video showing various Veterans Administration employees, contractors, volunteers discussing the pill-pushing culture of the Department of Veterans Affairs. You thought the VA scandal was over, folks? No, actually, when the VA scandal erupted a year ago, that was just an ongoing and long ongoing continuum.
Well, let's say this about it. It was the tip of the iceberg, and it's one big-ass iceberg.
Oh, yes, it is. Bigger than the one that sank the Titanic, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Maureen McCarthy, the Deputy Chief of Patient Services for the entire Veterans Administration, was caught on hidden camera telling a Project Veritas investigative journalist that, quote, it's people that have drug problems, some of which we caused by us and our prescribing. In discussing the various cocktails of drugs given out by the VA, McCarthy stated that combination in particular is like candy for some people. It's like they want it, they want it, they want it. Now, sadly, on average, and there's a connection here, 22 American veterans take their own lives every day 22 every day. The VA appears to be a bit too eager to simply write prescription after prescription and move on to the next patient rather than actually getting to the root of the problem many soldiers with post-traumatic stress disorder face. Georgianne Davis, a senior VA volunteer based in Buffalo, New York, told a Project Veritas investigative journalist that, in my opinion, they are creating drug addicts. Now, that's not entirely precise, folks. What they're doing is using drugs to make veteran patients go away because they have no market competition compelling them to provide vets the best possible care, and the result is that the veteran patients are becoming drug addicts and sometimes committing suicide. The VA simply does not give a damn one way or the other, or that, unlike Bo Bergdahl, these men and women did serve with honor and distinction, did not ask to suffer painful, sometimes catastrophic injuries, but they were willing to risk it in order to serve their country and spare we the people the possibility of incurring the same or worse. So, if this, we've said it before. If you want to see a preview of where Obamacare is taking us to single payer, universal Medicaid, look at the VA. It's as simple as that. That's single payer. Now, I did mention in my post that I'm not really the best person to speak firsthand about dealing with the VA system because I don't have any firsthand experience at it, but I know you certainly can. Mm-hmm. Or do we have enough time in the program for?
No. We've got a lot of things to go over. The only thing I was thinking as you were talking, because I'm multitasking, is I came across. I hadn't had a chance to look at it yet. Your story about Putin, and the title is "This is my last territorial demand in Europe." And I thought to myself, wait a second, isn't that what Hitler said? Boy, you and I think alike. What's funny about that is I've got a article I've been wanting to call Obama's Sudetenland, but I'm going to make it a reference towards what's been going on in the inner cities and riots and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
very interesting post to look forward to. In the very near future at politicalpistachio.com.
But getting back to drugging our veterans, I'm a veteran. I'm a part of the VA system, and the first thing they want to do is throw drugs down your throat after you wait all day to see the doctor and get some blood drawn. And so, your post is very accurate, very interesting, and the only reason why I'm not stuck on the drugs they tried to shove down my throat is because I'm a firm believer in essential oils. So I'm kind of a natural. I believe in natural things. I figure God gave us everything we need to take care of ourselves. All we just have to do is figure out what we're supposed to be using to do it.
Holistic medicine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like I mean, every once in a while you have to pop a pill. I mean, trust me, there's migraine strength Excedrin in my cabinet for every once in a while because I get constant migraines. But
you should have seen the
peppermint. I use peppermint oil on my temples. Usually takes care of it.
Yeah, they should have seen the witch's brew they pumped me full of when I was in the hospital a few years ago.
Yeah, enough to choke a horse, I'm sure, or his goat that's on the beach with him.
You beat me to it.
What was it COG said earlier? Millions of Muslims can't be wrong when it came to the goat.
I'm not sure if I'm sorry I missed that or not.
Yeah, that's what he put. That's what he put in the chat room. I thought it was a hoot. Thanks, COG, for keeping us on our toes.
Or our hooves, as the case.
Or he put 100 million Muslims can't be wrong, because he put love that commercial, but the goat is the real star. 100 million Muslims can't be wrong.
Gosh, that must be one tired goat.
Yeah. Oh, so you've seen the footage also of the satellite images. Okay.
Well, I tried not to, but it's kind of like when Quint gets eaten by the shark in Jaws. You don't want to watch, but you almost kind of have to.
Yeah, it's some bad stuff. All right, story number 12. His father's son. I am a fan of Rand Paul. I like Rand Paul. I think Rand Paul is a good conservative. I think he understands the Constitution quite well. I think on a few things he's a little funny about, and I think his father Ron Paul is even funnier about certain things. For example, our definition of what a foreign entanglement is don't necessarily line up, but that's okay. He's my ally. We agree most of the time. But when someone starts opening their mouths and actually damages the cause, I have problems with that. And of late, Rand Paul has been in this open mouth, seal brain, tick off everybody and damage the cause mode. And I don't get it. I really don't.
Well, see, if the idea was that Rand Paul was going to be kind of a Trojan horse for his dad to import pure libertarianism into the GOP to fundamentally transform it, so to speak. The whole point of a Trojan horse is concealment. And Rand Paul's entitled to his opinion on the NSA and on the Patriot Act, and he got
sure. I mean, we don't have to be in full agreement. He's a good guy. I'm fine with him as a senator.
And he got quite a bit of what he wanted in the USA Freedom Act, which the Senate belatedly passed this week. So I don't know why he can't just point to that and claim a significant victory. But of course that's not enough. Because
for libertarians and some of your Tea Party members, don't get me wrong, I love the Tea Party, but for some of your Tea Party element and a lot of your libertarians, it's all or nothing. Either you are 100% in my corner and we agree on everything, or you are the enemy. And therefore, they expect to get everything they want. They don't understand that sometimes you gotta make a few concessions to get what you can get.
Yeah, the game never ends. In other words, it's always the tug of war back and forth, the pendulum, if you will. It's ongoing, or as the expression has been, the national conversation debate that's been going on for 239 years almost, is supposed to keep going. It's not there's no, like the left keeps making the mistake of every time they win a national election, they think, well, debate's over, we won. Other side's dead, forget about them, we won. And then that always proves premature, like Mark Twain saying, well, the reports of my death have been premature. It's the same thing with this. And now, during the heat of the Patriot Act renewal debate, of course, as we've talked about in recent weeks, Rand Paul accused GOP hawks of creating the Islamic State and threw out some other intemperate comments that pissed off a lot of people in the Republican Party. Now, it just so happens that Rand Paul is running for president. And if you're running for president in the Republican Party for the Republican presidential nomination, you kind of need Republican donors. I mean, it seems like every major Republican presidential candidate has at least one big-pocketed donor. Marco Rubio does, Scott Walker does, Chris Christie does, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My message to Rand Paul is simply this. If you want to run for president and you want to see how these kinds of antics work for presidential campaigns, just go talk to your dad. Well, exactly. And his reputation preceded him. The whole point of Rand Paul getting into politics was to kind of soften those edges, kind of breed the bridge. Well, yeah, Rand Paul, was not exactly his dad, and that's one of the things I like. Because, I respect Rand Paul. I like Rand Paul in the sense that he brings attention to the Constitution. I agree with him that the Fed should be edited, audited, and thrown out the window. But when I say the Fed, I mean the Federal Reserve. But on the same token, taking Ross Perot communication lessons doesn't do it. And no, not by itself. And see, this is where these recent intemperate comments about members of his own party has created kind of a problem for Rand Paul. Some of the biggest donors and fundraisers in the Republican Party still uncertain who should get their support in 2016. They're spreading the wealth around multiple candidates, are doing exactly that, but the largesse born of their indecision has a notable exception: Rand Paul. The Kentucky senator has aggressively tried to raise money around his effort to curtail the surveillance powers of the NSA, emailing supporters and posting messages on social media imploring people to celebrate this victory with their cash. But in doing so, he's exacerbated the perception among some of the GOP's most generous donors that his positions on foreign policy are too much like his dad's, and thus make him an unacceptable choice for the White House. This is especially so to those who consider an aggressive posture abroad and support for Israel paramount, and never has an aggressive posture abroad been more needed to correct the retreats and weaknesses and sellouts of Barack Obama. So this is a case of really bad timing on the case of Rand Paul. If Rand Paul had been running in 2008, I think he would have had an audience.
Absolutely.
For this
well,
sort of thing.
And
now?
he's not understanding that most Republicans are willing to bicker over some of these issues, but when it comes to national defense, most Republicans believe none of those other issues matter when it comes to national defense, because those other issues won't matter if you don't apply the proper amount of, military force in the proper location.
Yeah, I mean that's a long-existing, long-running philosophical debate. You know, the inter arma, how does that go? Inter arma silent. I forget. You know, the Latin term for in time of war the law falls silent. Cicero. It's a Cicero quote. Since we like Cicero on this show, and it's the ongoing debate between security and liberty. You know, I mean,
right.
It's an honest debate. People on both sides of it come by it honestly. There's no unfairness or neither side is evil. In other words, there are arguments on both sides, and it's an ongoing debate. But the more trouble externally that the country gets in, the more necessary national defense becomes. And like I say, I think this really is a question of bad timing for Rand Paul. If he'd come along in 2008, I think he would have found a much more receptive audience within the Republican Party for pulling back, retrenching, war weariness, if you want to call it that. But 8 years later, with multiple threats, the Russians, the Chicoms, who, by the way, hacked into the United States government servers and stole the personnel records of over 4 million federal employees.
We'll get to that.
You got the NOCOs developing submarine-launched ballistic missiles. You got the Islamic State building chemical weapons and working on acquiring nuclear weapons. You got the Iranians going nuclear. You got all these things happening, and the world is well, it looks like the late 1930s, and that's not the time. That's really not the time for an ostensibly Republican presidential candidate to come along and start sounding like Neville Chamberlain.
And the frightening part about it is, when you talk about it, 1930s, is the one who's most setting up the world for war is the American president.
Well, yeah, well, I think that's I'm on record.
That's what Ben Carson said. Isn't that what Ben Carson said? That Obama is setting the world up for war.
Well, and Ben Carson is a very intelligent man and very perceptive.
Oh, I love
man.
him, absolutely. And
it's hard not
to be like a mayor first and things like that.
It's hard not to notice these things. It's like I keep saying on Hard Starboard Radio. Can any president be this incompetent? At some point, Occam's razor has got to figure into the equation. The simplest explanation that fits all the facts is usually the correct one. That's Occam's razor. Well, I mean, it's the first rule of logic to get all pointed-eared on you. See, I
knew that Star Trek
see,
reference was coming.
You knew that Star Trek reference was coming. You absolutely did.
Yes.
Enter the equation.
There we go. We lost you for a second. Repeat that.
It seems that way to me.
No, we lost you for just a second. Say that again.
Yeah, I heard the sound in my headphones. At some point, doesn't.
All heard it again.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Oh, good. At some point, don't do it again. At some point, doesn't the possibility that all of this is deliberate rather than accidental have to enter the equation, at least for consideration? I mean, it seems that way to me.
All right, story number 11, gay tyranny. I know we talk about this agenda a lot, but it's because they throw it in our face a lot. I think this is going to be disgusting to talk about. Wait till the next story.
Oh my God.
Yeah, one of the things that I wrote about in Tabletop News, and I actually kept it pretty tame the way I wrote it because it was a mainstream media kind of audience, is the Intolerance Jackass Act.
Yeah.
Did you read that? Yeah.
I read it. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah, really, it's very illustrative, folks. Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
It's very illustrative.
Well, and of course, Kamala Harris is, right smack in the middle of making sure this thing's moving forward. One of the peoples who we were expecting that Obama would make a chief justice in the Supreme, or not maybe not the chief, but a justice in the Supreme Court should a spot open. It's either going to be Kamala Harris or Hillary. Well, he's got to keep her out of the presidency, trying to become president so he can, toss the 22nd Amendment aside without, anything in the way.
I hope that Scalia, Roberts, Thomas, Alito, and sometimes Kennedy have beefed up their personal security forces. So I can say.
Well, in California, there was a Sodomite Suppression Act that was stupidly pushed by a local lawyer that basically called for capital punishment for homosexuality.
I think
or as I accidentally spelled it in my article, captial punishment.
I think that guy was an LGBTQ troll myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean they needed somebody to try to pull a stunt like that in order to be able to point to that and say, see, that's what Christians want. That's what Christians really want.
And the right-wing wingnuts wouldn't do it, so they had to do it themselves. But nonetheless, so what that did is good old Harris, Attorney General Kamala Harris says, well, that act threatens public safety and is unconstitutional, blah, 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 blah. And so here comes the Sodomite Suppression Act. The Intolerant Jackass Act. But that's not the only gay tyranny stuff going on. What was you were writing? The new normal what?
It was in British Columbia, actually. In British Columbia, they're all androgynes now. Now, this has to do with whether gender is disclosed on birth certificates for newborns. And in British Columbia, they've decided, no, we're not going to list gender. We're not going to list the sex of the child. This is a quote it's from National Review. The Human Rights Tribunal in British Columbia. Human Rights Tribunal, by the way, folks. That's code language if there ever was one.
They project and then say the opposite of what they mean, because they kind of cover up what they really mean.
Let's just say this.
It's 1984 Orwellian speak. Slavery is freedom and peace is war, and
Oh yeah. Let's just put it this way: Human Rights Tribunal started arising in Canada after Canada imposed homosexual marriage. about almost a decade ago. So that's kind of a clue as to where we're headed if the Supreme Court does it to us. But the Human Rights Tribunal in British Columbia will consider completely eliminating gender designations from birth certificates in response to complaints from the Trans Alliance Society and other transgender individuals, according to an article in the Canadian National Post. According to the complainants, we need to stop acting as if doctors can tell the sex of a baby just by looking at the baby's genitals. Birth certificates may give false information about people and characterize them in a way that is actually wrong, that assumes to be right and causes people actual harm, said transgender woman, or in other words, mutilated man, and Trans Alliance Society Chair Morgane Ogre. Now you're aware, I assume you're aware, ladies and gentlemen, that when you sign up for a Facebook account and it comes to the question about what gender you are, you have 58 different options, which led me to wonder, what if the LGBT crowd rewrote Genesis 1:27? Here, I think, is how it would read. Gaia created hermaphrodites in her own image. In the image of Gaia, he, she created her. Take a big breath now. Agender, androgyne, androgynous, bigender, cisgender, cis-female, cis-male, cis-man, cis-woman, cisgender female, cisgender male, cisgender man, cisgender woman, female to male, FTM, gender fluid, gender non-conforming, gender questioning, gender variant, gender queer, intersex, male to female, MTF, neither, neutrosis, non-binary, other, pangender, trans asterisk, trans female, trans asterisk female, trans male, trans asterisk female, trans man, trans asterisk man, trans person, trans asterisk person, trans woman, trans asterisk woman, trans feminine, transgender, transgender female, transgender male, transgender man, transgender person, transgender woman, trans masculine, transsexual, transsexual female, transsexual male, transsexual man, transsexual person, transsexual woman, and two-spirit. She created them. That's only part of the list, folks. That's only part. You know what I said earlier, that we really have lost our minds?
Let's break this down, though, Jasmine. So I want to ask some questions real quick. When it comes to communism, what is the ultimate goal of communism?
To destroy every competing institution, social, political, or otherwise.
And ultimately create a utopian society where everybody pitches in and everybody's exactly the same and there's no individuality and no difference between anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then we wonder why this transgender, we don't want to put the gender on our birth certificates, all that crap's going on. It's bigger than what's on the surface.
But always, it's back to the iceberg analogy again. It's always bigger than what's on the surface.
Yeah, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's a big-ass iceberg.
I tell you, I wouldn't even know where to begin translating Genesis 2:24 with this pagan insanity, other than to mention that there would be plenty of flesh.
Strange flesh at that. Okay.
Strange flesh.
Speaking of strange flesh, let's go to story number 10. Now, if you think that discussion disgusted you, I look at the image and I go, I can't believe I looked at that image.
Yeah, that's what Ron White's things that make you go it's like he looked forward in time and saw the latest Vanity Fair cover, and I can't help noticing that there's still a bulge in his one-piece swimsuit.
We're talking about Caitlyn Jenner / Bruce Jenner. I don't like using that word Caitlyn. I'm not going to call him Caitlyn. He's Bruce, and because you can physically do all you want, but deep inside he's still Bruce Jenner, and he's still a man.
Well, I mean, it's you know how the left talks about being the reality-based community, and they accuse conservatives of being anti-science. Well, apparently genetics is not within that same category, because genetics is it's a scientific fact. Gender is genetics. It is people have one of two genetic genders. 2 X chromosomes or an X and a Y. That's it. There is no other. There is no other. That's it. There are 2 genders. It's a genetic fact. It's not a matter of personal autonomy. It's not a matter of gender fluidity. It's not a matter of individual autonomy. It's a scientific fact. Now, Bruce Jenner may not like the fact that he's a man, or may have stopped liking the fact that he's a man. That doesn't change the fact. I mean, he can pretend to be a woman if he wants. I mean, there's nobody can stop him, obviously not. But see, the issue with this isn't so much Bruce Jenner's choices and his selfishness and what he did to his family. His children have lost a father. His wife lost a husband. So there were consequences to this that he inflicted upon them. But it's not so much Bruce Jenner's choices, but that we, the rest of us, are being practically commanded to applaud it. Right. We're not being given a choice. I mean, if Bruce Jenner wants to be a transvestite, if he wants to mutilate himself, if he wants to pretend to be a woman, he can do it. That's his business. But we don't have to acknowledge it. We don't have to embrace it, and we don't have to swallow this fiction and parrot it back that, well, this is the new normal. Like hell it is. And again, it's a scientific matter. It's genetics. There are not 58 different chromosomes in the human genome for gender. There are 2. And if you don't like the one you have, well, that's too bad, because that's what God gave you.
Well, the homosexual crowd says, well, God made me that way. Are you saying God makes mistakes? And then the trans come say, well, God screwed up the way he made me. And so it's almost like 2 conflicting arguments. There's an expression that really captures that. Any turd in a pocket, any port in a storm. Karen, they're not interested in logic. They want their narrative shoved down our throats, and they don't care how they do it. So whatever they have to do to justify it, whatever they have to do to sell it, if you can't convince them, confuse them. That's all it really is. The other thing to note about this Caitlyn Jenner or Call Me Caitlyn cover in Vanity Fair. Mm-hmm. Bruce Jenner is 65 years old. I mean, even if you wanted to pretend to be a woman, why would you pose in a swimsuit when you're 65 years old? I mean, I'm going to go way out on a limb and say that Hillary Clinton is not going to be coming out with a Vanity Fair shoot anytime soon. Well, if she does, I
hope not. At least I hope not. Yeah, that might make me say, oh, please, God, give me the Call Me Caitlyn cover back. Jeez Louise. It's like, let's just say it has a particular effect on the male sensibilities. Oh, come on, folks. You didn't think we were going to be able to get through this story without playing that at least once, did you?
Yeah, I was. Matter of fact, I was going to ask you to play it, but great minds think alike. All right, story number 9. Obamacare continues to stumble. Obamacare kills single payer in Vermont. Tell us, what's going on there? Are they? Actually, it's supposed to kill itself so that single payer can come into play. Isn't that what Obamacare is supposed to do?
Oh, that's the big picture grand strategy, clear back from the day Barack Obama first declared his presidential candidacy. In fact, there's a YouTube video of it, folks, Obama on single-payer health insurance, where he comes right out and says it. He says, I am a believer in single-payer universal health care, but we can't get there all at once. And he sets forth how we're going to – they have had to set up some means of concoct some means of destroying the private health insurance market first, so that we, the people, would have no place else to go but into the already existing federal single-payer system, namely Medicaid. That's the purpose of Obamacare. And it's proving to be wildly successful. I mean, you already have private health insurance carriers asking for as much as 60% premium hikes for next year. And they're talking about if King versus Burwell, the Obamacare subsidies case before the Supreme Court this summer, if they're talking, if that goes against Obamacare subsidies for plans purchased through healthcare.gov, which there's no provision for in the original Obamacare legislation, that could cause premium hikes of more like 300%. And that is the proverbial death spiral. The death of the federal or of the private health insurance market. Carriers either going out of business or just withdrawing, not providing health insurance anymore because it would drive their companies bankrupt. Now, in Vermont at least, and this is the ray of hope. See, this is a hopeful story. This is a positive story, an optimistic story.
Yeah, because we need to hope that all this will change.
Yeah, in Vermont, it was maybe a little bit too successful. This was from, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Times. Just a few years ago, lawmakers in Vermont, this left-leaning state, viewed Barack Obama's Unaffordable Care Less Act as being little more than a pit stop on the road to a far more ambitious goal, single-payer universal health care for all residents, or in other words, the latest left-wing utopian fantasy. Then things unraveled. The online insurance cartel that Vermont built to enroll people in private coverage under the law had extensive technical failures. I know, it's astonishing. The problem soured the public and legislative enthusiasm for sweeping health care changes, just as Governor Peter Shumlin, a Democrat, needed to build support for his complex single-payer plan. Finally, Governor Shumlin, a Democrat, shelved the plan last December, citing the high cost to taxpayers. He called the decision the greatest disappointment of my political life. But even though its resident subsidies appear safe for now, Vermont stands as a cautionary tale. Despite an eventual cost of up to $200 million in federal funds, its online cartel is still not fully functional, while disgust with the system is running deep among residents and lawmakers alike. So, Obamacare killed single payer in Vermont, folks. Vermont, Ben and Jerry land. Tie-dye, everybody wears tie-dyed everything and drinks syrup out of trees. In Vermont, if Obamacare could kill single payer in Vermont, now, in other words, Obamacare has so crapped the bed on state-run medicine that even Vermont the idea has even become unpopular in Vermont. Even Vermonters have given up on it, or for now at least. So there is hope, folks. There is still hope. Maybe not much, but there is still hope.
Now, the next story I accidentally put in this. It belonged in the Great Invasion of America, but let's talk about it since it's here anyway. And that was Scott Walker said he reversed Obamnesty or Obamnesty. Is that what you call it? Obamnesty?
Obamnesty, yes.
Okay. Once again, I put it in the wrong place. It belongs in story number 7, The Invasion of America. So we'll talk about it two stories early. But Scott Walker was in an interview on AM 970 in New York and said, and he's considering the White House run, and said if he was elected president, he'd back out of Obama's horrible nuclear deal with Iran, of which Obama told him, well, you need to go around the block a few times if you want to be able to, whatever. Reverse Obama's executive order on immigrants, illegal immigrants, and work with Congress to achieve reforms to put power back in the hands of the states. That is music to my ears.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, have you heard anybody else in the Republican field come out and just put it as baldly as that? If I'm elected, I'm going to reverse this and this and this and that and that and this and this. Because I don't think that Governor Walker or a President Walker would stop there. I mean, there's several dozen illegal, extra legal Obamacare tweaks, his national water confiscation we talked about last week, or all the other EPA power grabs.
He challenged
of the past
unions
6+
and
years.
survived. He has a track record that he's, for lack of a better way of putting it, a badass. So.
Yeah. It's exactly what you would expect to hear from Scott Walker. That he's talking about doing things boldly, coming right out, not to reverse things, to do things that nobody else is talking about doing, because whether they think it'll create, oh no, what's the liberal media going to say about this? What are the Democrats going to say about this? No, Scott Walker doesn't care. He comes right out and says what he's going to do, and he did it in Wisconsin. He's going to do it as President of the United States. I just thought it sets him, once again, apart from the rest of the field. That's why Scott Walker, I think, is the front runner, and that's why I think he's going to be the next President of the United States.
I sure hope you're right, as we definitely need him over the other possibilities. Number 8, California's drought, liberal lies. We've talked about this before. We're going to talk about it again. I was at a Republican Party event and speaking to somebody not too long ago, and he was going over some numbers with me, and he said that 70% of our water winds up in the ocean. 10% of our water is consumed by humans. 7% of our water is set aside for the delta smelt and then dumped into the ocean. So even if Californians during this drought were to curtail their water usage, it would make a tiny little dent.
And of course,
not because the drought's so bad, but because of where the water's going and the fact that it's like L.A. is now considering trying to, hang out of some of the rainwater. What, you didn't think that was a good idea before?
Well, the left knows what they're going for, but the left counts on low information voters, people who don't think, people who aren't informed, people who can be led around by the nose endlessly. And then these policies create these disasters, and then they say, oh, no, what are we going to do? And so then some of them start coming back to what they should have been doing all along. Others say, well, they just cry out to the government to save us, and then that just makes things worse. I mean, I find it highly entertaining. In fact, I found a piece that I think, if I recall correctly, I posted on your Facebook feed about California Governor Jerry Brown issuing that executive order ordering all Californians to restrict water use by another 25%. At the same time, the city of Murrieta is threatening to fine you for not watering your lawn. So it's just an endless series of entertaining contradictions, as well as a gigantic pain in the ass, in the words of Griffin the Arcanan. But he declares a water emergency in California due to drought conditions. But what the governor is not saying is that he and his radical environmentalist buddies are largely responsible for the harsh effects of the drought. The Delta smelt, turning the Imperial Valley into a dust bowl. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And of course, the natural drought cycle, it's a cycle, just like everything else in nature, happens to have come along at precisely the time that environmentalists are forcing Californians to die of thirst anyway. So it's just, it makes you wonder, is there an upper limit to this stuff where people will just say enough? Will they just say, they'll just say, screw you, I'm not going to die of thirst just to keep a fish alive that I can't even eat?
Wow. Story. Well, matter of fact, NASA says that we've got a year's. Well, NASA says we have a year's worth of water left, but yet I've got another report that says we got 31 years worth of water. So I don't know. And then of course, the left, they blame the drought on capitalism. Well, gosh, if you weren't so successful, so many people wouldn't be in California, then they wouldn't be using so much water.
I think the way that works is that there are 31 years worth of water, or there is 31 years worth of water left in California, but 30 of it will wind up in the ocean.
Yeah.
I think that's how that works.
All right. Story number 7, the Great Invasion of America, that Scott Walker link was supposed to be here, but 56% of Republicans support amnesty, including back tax refunds for illegals. I've talked to some of these Republicans. They say, well, if they're going to be here, we might as well get some, money out of them.
Yeah, well, now that was a Pew Research survey. It was conducted May the 12th through May the 18th, so just last month. And the results indicated, to the question, should there be a way for undocumented, well, I don't use that term, illegal aliens to stay in country if requirements are met? Democrats say 80%, independents 76%. You take that for granted. But Republicans, 56% said yes. I mean, you've even got Ted Cruz effectively throwing in the towel on even deferred deportation.
But this is rewarding bad behavior.
Now it's very interesting that you say that, because when you see the headline, you see 56% of Republicans support amnesty. How can that be? When it was just last November that 75-80% of Republicans were absolutely dead set against it. Well, here is the context in which I think, because those two really don't reconcile, you wouldn't think. And so how can that possibly be? Well, it isn't that Republicans have suddenly just done a total about-face and embraced amnesty. I think it's that they're just feeling resigned to it. That this is what's been forced on us by Barack Obama's illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional immigration proclamation, and he's forcing amnesty anyway. He's ignoring federal court orders to cease and desist. And by the time a Republican were to get in the White House, January 20th, 2017, the damage will already have been done. It'll be a fait accompli. I think it's a sense of resignation. Because later in this poll, you see that to the question, which comes closer to your view? Immigrants today are either burden the country by taking jobs, housing, and health care, or strengthen the country through hard work and talents. 63% of Republicans say that illegal aliens are a burden to the country. And then you have 58% of the Republicans saying that allowing illegal aliens to remain in the United States is, like you said mere moments ago, a reward for wrongdoing. So it's not that Republicans are now backing amnesty, it's that they just see it as something that's been done to us, and by the time we can do anything about it, it'll be too late. I think it's just a sense of resignation. At least that's how I interpret it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay. Story number 6, racial division, the war for America, the African-American Spring, and well, I've been wanting to compare this to Sudetenland, because basically what Hitler told the Germans in Czechoslovakia was, he convinced them, you're being treated wrong, you need to take this back, this kind of thing. And that's how he gained their support. And that's exactly what Obama's doing. He's separating America into little groups, segregating us into little groups, and then setting these groups against each other. That's what the left does. And it's a divide and conquer type of mode of modus operandi. Meanwhile, you've got gun violence, according to one of your articles, I didn't read it, so I don't know what the details. It says gun violence increasing nationwide. Well, that doesn't surprise me, in the sense of Chicago.
Oh yeah, they're calling it the Ferguson effect. So it doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to figure out what that implies. Now, it's symptomatic. What's going on in Baltimore is symptomatic. Last weekend alone, 9 Baltimoreans were gunned down in cold blood. And as of last Friday, I believe it was, the number of homicides in Baltimore, in fact, the number of homicides in Baltimore in the month of May alone were numbered 40. 40 murders, 40 gun murders in Baltimore just in the month of May. And that's not an isolated exception, folks. Instead of being simply the most recently publicized instance of a trend that is metastasizing coast to coast, no joke. This is from Newsmax. Gun violence is climbing in the nation's cities, marking a likely end to the 20-year national decline in the crime rates because of changing laws that make it more difficult for police to do their jobs, according to the Wall Street Journal. Crime is the worst I've ever seen it, said St. Louis Alderman Joe Vaccaro during a City Hall hearing earlier this month. Writes Heather McDonald in the Wall Street Journal. Let's see. In St. Louis alone, shootings are up 39%. Robberies up 43%. Homicides up 25%. St. Louis is not the only city seeing increases aside from Baltimore. Speaking of Baltimore, according to the Baltimore Police Department, gun violence in that city is up more than 60% over last year. And then the homicides were up by 180%, almost threefold in Milwaukee, Wisconsin by May 17th over the same period last year. In Atlanta, murders are up by 32% by mid-May. And in Chicago, homicides went up by 17% and shootings by 24%. Even in New York City, the murder rate has risen nearly 13%, and gun violence by 7% over last year. And violent felonies in Los Angeles went up by 25%. And here's if you want to call it a punchline or a shot line. Even worse, neighborhood-level crime climbed even more, with shooting incidents going up by 500% in New York's East Harlem precinct, which last I heard was a predominantly African-American area. So this is what is, these are the results of these policies. In fact, it was St. Louis Police Chief Sam Dotson who calls this the Ferguson effect. This means police are backing away from enforcement activity while the criminal element feels empowered, pointing out similar Ferguson effects all happening nationwide as police scale back on proactive police actions. Any cop who uses his gun now has to worry about being indicted and losing his job and family, said a New York police officer. Everything has the potential to be recorded. A lot of cops feel that the climate for the next couple of years is going to be non-stop protests. Now, it's like I say, ladies and gentlemen, in many other contexts, and it applies here as well, life is about incentives. If you create an incentive where law enforcement is discouraged from enforcing the law, being proactive, then you're going to get a crime wave like you've never seen before, and that fits right into the martial law agenda, however he was able to bring it about, of Barack Obama.
My fellow Americans, welcome to mob rule.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have martial law if you don't have a pretext for it.
And meanwhile, we have our local leaders enabling this and actually pushing for, even worse. In the case of Baltimore, the Baltimore scramble, Marilyn Mosby, the Attorney General, is blocking the release of Freddie Gray's autopsy.
Yeah, which is just fascinating.
Now, if there's nothing wrong, and you're right, why do you have to block anything that might? I don't know. In the legal world, you're supposed to side on whatever's right and whatever's the law. So therefore, if your theory is proven wrong, hey, that's the way the law is supposed to work. The law is the law. The truth is the truth. Same thing with science. You're supposed to challenge everything and come up with the right idea. You don't come to a scientific conclusion by consensus, but by scientific fact. But yet we've got this. No, we don't want the facts, because this really isn't about the facts. This isn't about what happened. This is about race. This is about an agenda.
Well, think about it, folks. Just think about this for a minute. Now, Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has put herself up as the social justice crusader. And I have heard your cries for justice, brothers and sisters, and I will give you what you want. And now, in that context, doesn't it seem kind of curious that she is now trying to block the release of Freddie Gray's autopsy report? Here's a quote from the Baltimore Sun. Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby plans to seek a protective order blocking the release of Freddie Gray's autopsy and other sensitive documents as she prosecutes the 6 police officers involved in his arrest. Mosby discussed that intention in a court filing Monday, in which she also asked the court for more time to respond to defense motions that she and her office be removed from the case and that the case be tried outside of Baltimore. By the way, a judge just
where in the country are you going to get a fair case hearing? Where?
We talked about that last week. No place. It's kind of the whole point. And justice, true justice, is not the point here. The point here is Marilyn Mosby's burgeoning Senate career.
That and black nationalism justice.
And black nationalism. Interestingly enough, a judge just yesterday ordered Marilyn Mosby to answer the defense counsel's objections that she be removed from the case and her conflicts of interest and all the attention that she's been attracting to herself, trying to use this as a springboard to bigger and better things, higher office, and so forth. So she's going to have her judgment day. It's June 26th. June 26th, which is kind of a compromise date because according to the law, that date would have been June 11th. She wanted a full month, so the judge in question kind of split the difference. But she's got until June 26th to come up with convincing answers for why she shouldn't be removed from this case, or she just might be removed. I thought that's her judgment day. I thought it was kind of fascinating, but doesn't it? I mean, if what do you think was in the Freddie Gray autopsy results? What do you think is it? Because it seems to me that if the autopsy
probably
results,
shows that he caused his own injuries.
I mean, if the autopsy results fit her narrative, she would have plastered them. She would have called another press conference. She would have plastered them all over everywhere. We would be hearing nothing but that. But she wants to cover them up. She doesn't want them to come out. Now, I mean, if here again, Occam's razor. I mean, I don't want to be conspiratorial with this stuff, but I mean, if the autopsy results supported her narrative, she wouldn't be blocking the release. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it was possible to overplay a hand that turned out to be a pair of threes, but I guess Marilyn Mosby really is an overachiever. By the way, we got 15 minutes left, and we're already on story number 5. Are we going to have any left?
I do want to go to story number 4. Let's talk about the man behind the curtain, because the brink of war is so long.
Yeah, that is true.
There's a lot of links in there. There's like a whole page of links in there, and then some.
I noticed.
Well, it's just they all kind of fit into that same. I mean, we don't have to go into any of them in particular for a long time because they all kind of say the same thing. Obama's leading this nation to war. One thing about Ben Carson is he nailed it with that statement.
Well, he's leading the nation to war, but for some other president to have to fight.
Yeah. Well, that's if he steps down.
If he steps down. But then, when you stop and think about it, what was one of the biggest factors in getting Barack Obama elected in the first place? A war.
Oh, well, he's the anti-war president.
A war. So if you're going to get a Democrat elected anytime soon, you got to have another war. And he's seeding a whole bunch of them. See, again, don't tell me that Barack Obama's incompetent, folks. I'm just not buying it. So, in
the chat room, we're talking about Mexican food.
Well, Mexican
hungry
food
yet?
does. I'm always hungry. You know that.
White joke in there earlier. COG was saying, that they, eat like shakes and bars all day, but save steak for dinner or something like that. And I was like, made a joke. I said, I eat Mexican food every 3 hours. Which isn't really very far from the truth sometimes, but
wow, let's just say I'm glad I'm not your plumber.
Yeah, well, I drink a lot of Dr. Pepper, so I'm, they say it's got prune juice in it, and then I can attest that I am quite regular. Story number 4, the man behind the curtain. You can go ahead and isn't there another sound in there that's sort of like the puking sound that's from the other end? You have one of those?
What, belching?
No, no, the other end. Defecating. You don't have a defecating sound effect?
No. I do not actually have one of those.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get one of those. You probably from American Pie. You probably get it from there.
Well, I mean, there is the National Baked Bean Day promo.
No, that's okay.
You know what? You don't want to hear this?
July is National Baked Bean Month. Excuse me. Yes, a month in which we pay tribute to one of America's favorite, most healthful, and nutritious foods. I'm terribly sorry. As I was saying, good Lord, this is terribly embarrassing. I'm so... Whoa, doggy! I guess I'd better wrap this up quick. Basically, Jesus, whoa! Oh, God! My God!
Baked beans. They're nature's way of saying, for God's sake, open a window. Sorry.
Laundry day. Nothing clean.
Yeah,
sorry, that's the best I can do.
Suddenly have this urge to leave the room. Man behind the curtain.
Open a window. I got a window open.
President Barack Obama says that our nation is now more respected than ever before, thanks to him, and also he's the closest thing to having a Jew in the White House than ever before. Now, and I disagree, because didn't Netanyahu visit the White House?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I posted a picture at politicalpistachio.com on Tuesday that shows Benjamin Netanyahu sitting in a chair in the White House. So, in fact, Barack Obama's seated right near him. So, it sure looks to me like Bibi's Tookus was in a White House chair. In fact, what inspired me that's the Yiddish term for Heine.
Yeah. No, I've learned quite a bit of Hebrew words from Howard on Big Bang Theory. Tookus is one of them.
And we'll just limit that recitation to Tookus. As opposed to like putz. We won't.
He uses that one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but in fact,
he says to his wife, among my people, I'm what they call a putz. And then finally, after the end of the episode, you are a putz.
But actually, it was Robert Gardis's post that you're referencing.
Yeah, Robert Garding. Yeah, that's right.
Garding. I'm never going to get that right. Guarding.
Yeah, Robert Garding, he's one of our newest writers. He puts something in there once every few days, and he's also from Wise Conservatism and one of the sharpest people I know.
Yeah, I botched that on the air the other day, too. Robert Garding. Like you say, another joining the family of contributors at politicalpistachio.com.
Yeah, Tom sent me a note saying, I see you got a bunch of contributors for your website. Now the writing's better.
Yeah, I saw that.
So thanks a lot, buddy.
Jesus. Well, he's not subtle, but he's being complimentary in an insulting way. Let's just put it that way.
That's Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Tom, all right. But let me just give you this Newsmax quote. A dismayed Barack Obama recently vented to his friend and former chief campaign advisor David the Stash Axelrod, which, by the way, is the best name for a political hack and fixer ever, Axelrod, about being perceived by some as a foe to Israel, according to JPUpdates.com and the Daily Caller. You know, I think I am the closest thing to a Jew that has ever sat in this office, Axelrod recalled during Obama telling him during an interview. For people to say that I am anti-Israel or even worse, anti-Semitic, it hurts. Well, yeah, the truth often does, Barry. Good thing his impenetrable ego usually protects him from it so effectively, especially given his tissue-thin skin. Lonely and unappreciated are the cosmic narcissists. It is to weep. But, you know...
Oh, what a rough life. I'm so saddened by it.
Doesn't this remind you of that thing he said after the 2008 election? You know, the one where he said, I think I'm a better speechwriter than my speechwriters. I know more about policies on any particular issue than my policy directors. And I'll tell you right now that I'm going to think I'm a better political director than my political director. In this case...
So he's the one writing in his speeches then?
Yeah. In this...
matter of fact, I tell you what, because of that, we will play a portion of Obama Speaks on Constitution Radio later. We have that one.
Oh, that's awesome. You got to send me a copy of that. I wouldn't mind having that myself. I guess you could sum this up by saying that the ultimate rabbi was effectively saying, or you could call him President Christ, I suppose, I think that I'm a better Jew than Netanyahu, and I'll tell you right now that I think I'm a better Jew than Jesus himself. Well, he has always billed himself as the Messiah, after all, so I guess it kind of makes a twisted sort of sense.
Well, yeah, but the difference is the Jew he's trying to refer himself to walked on water. Obama just walks on conservatives.
He walks on conservatives and makes all the water drain out into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Does that work? He walks on dust.
Well, that's his one of his apostles, Jerry Brown, that does that.
Yeah, the apostle of dust. The apostle to the Delta Smelt.
Yeah. So if Jerry Brown was a superhero, he'd be Dust Man.
or Merman, one of the two. You know, it kind of takes that the whole "I will come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men" on a kind of turns it on its head. It seems to me. Come, all you fish, and I will make you manners of or how did that work? Fishers. I will make you fishers of manners of fish. Or so, I don't know.
I will make you fishers of Delta Smelts.
Fishers in your grocer's freezer. I'm still waiting to see Delta Smelt as a fish stick or a fish fillet. Or
now, see, I've had a couple of people tell me that they're tasty, and other people tell me they're not tasty, that they're really a crappy fish. So if they taste that bad, why are we trying to save them?
I don't know. I don't know. I suppose in the last few minutes here we can make mention of the Department of Justice study on far-right social media use. Which, in other words, they're still studying it. Because remember, it was back in 2009, I think, that Eric Holder mentioned, right-wing terrorist threat and so forth, just as the Tea Party was rising to prominence, and they're still doing it. In fact, the Department of Justice is concentrating. This is WashingtonFreeBeacon.com. The Department of Justice is concentrating on far-right groups in a new study of social media usage aimed at combating violent extremism. The Justice Department's National Institute of Justice awarded Michigan State University almost $600,000 for the study, which was praised by Eric the Red Holder, the former Reichsfuhrer, earlier this year. There is currently limited knowledge of the role of technology in computer-mediated communications. Maybe that explains why they can't figure out what ISIS is doing. Such as Facebook and Twitter in the dissemination of messages that promote extremist agendas and radicalize individuals to violence, according to the NIJ grant. The proposed study will address this gap through a series of qualitative and quantitative analyses of posts from various forms of CMC, CMC being computer-mediated communications, used by members of both the far-right and Islamic extremist movements. And, of course, Islamic extremism isn't Islamic, so you don't have to worry about that, low-information voters. I guess that means that Political Pistachio is going to get even more traffic than it has been getting already. What do you think?
Thank you, Alex. I was in deep thought. I was thinking about the show coming up. Say that again.
He just elbowed you.
I totally. COG earlier said they're mentally defected. I was mentally defected for about 60 seconds there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a kind of a Rick Perry moment. No, just in the context of the Obama Department of Justice continuing to study far-right social media use.
Oh, you're asking, let me guess what you said. Are you guessing that Political Pistachio is on that list?
No, I'm just saying that'll give Political Pistachio even more traffic than it was getting already.
Oh, yeah, that could happen.
Well,
we'll take it we've gotten 776,000 hits in the last 9 months, so I don't know.
Well, see, that creates a lot of chaff in which to hide the evil wheat. So think of it that way.
Well, the whole point of the title is this is, never mind the man behind the curtain. Just bow and, and be grateful that the great Obama is your wizard.
Or Messiah. I wonder if at his next press conference he's going to show up wearing a yarmulke.
Well, he is, once again, the closest thing to a Jew ever to be in the White House.
Yeah, he's the first Jewish president. He's the first Jewish president. Hey!
Well, so we had, Clinton was the first black president. Obama's the first Jewish president. And then so the Constitution.
That's not what I was going for.
Oh, are we done?
We are done.
All right, we'll see you guys in about 6 or 7 minutes on Constitution Radio, and I promise I won't be allowing my mind to wander trying to think of what's coming next on the show, because that is the show we're thinking.
KMEG 1490 AM.com. Join us.
Constitution is America's owner's manual. Douglas V. Gibbs is America's Constitution Authority, broadcasting live on KMET, AM 1490, Saturdays at 1 p.m.
And your income isn't enough, you need to read this book. And if you don't want to be selling burgers at 80, you need to read this free book. It includes the strategy I use to make a 72% profit on a trade where the stock only moved 12%. You'll need at least $1 million to ever fully retire. If you're behind on that goal, you really need to read Trade Like the Pros. And you can for free by calling 1-800-920-1059. Skeptical that it will deliver results? It's a free book, so what do you have to lose? Find out how at 1-800-920-1059. 1-800-920-1059.
The 242 residents of Garland City in southwest Arkansas are returning to their homes as waters of the flooded Red River recede. Officials issued an evacuation order yesterday when floodwaters threatened to undermine a levee. But the Army Corps of Engineers has inspected it and found it was sound. Heavy rains in Texas and Oklahoma in recent weeks triggered sharp rises on the Red River. Well, here's a problem that you don't see, or for that matter, want to see every day.
It was a buzzing problem inside Joy Goff Marciel's Florida home. Bees, and lots of them. And Joy called for help.
When the beekeeper came and said there could be 20 to 50,000 in there, I felt a panic.
Beekeeper Cliff Best cut out a section of ceiling revealing the mother load.
Proper removal is capturing the queen, removing the mass of the bees.
Sounds easy enough. Joy is just glad her unwanted guests have buzzed off. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Staff at Denali National Park in Alaska are warning visitors to be especially careful around wildlife after a cow moose with 2 calves injured at least 2 visitors over the past 10 days. One woman was hurt badly enough to be sent to the hospital for treatment. She'd been taking pictures of the moose when the animal charged the crowd, bashing the woman's shoulder with its hoof. This is ABC News.
There's a reason why so many celebrities use Proactive. Their faces are their money. And it's time for you to get it because Proactive has set up a special 800 number. For just $19.95, you'll get Proactive and a rotating deep cleansing brush. A $45 value, yours free. For only $19.95, you're guaranteed to get clear and stay clear or your money back. Here's the number, 1-800-644-5944. Call now for a lifetime of beautiful skin. 1-800-644-5944.
Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Don't miss this month's Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party meeting on Thursday, June 11th at 6 p.m. We'll be showing a documentary called Europe's Last Stand. This film shows the strategy being used to establish an Islamic caliphate in Europe. Learn what the media won't tell you about the stealth jihad and how the appeasement and political correctness in Europe has already devastated its churches and synagogues and is destroying their Judeo-Christian culture. This shocking and graphic documentary tells the truth about how our young are being indoctrinated by these radical zealots. This threat to Europe's freedoms, culture, and history are coming to America. Mark your calendars for Thursday, June 11th at 6 p.m. at the Farmhouse Restaurant in Banning off the I-10 Highland Springs exit. Bring your family, friends, church, and synagogue members to see this shocking documentary.
And it is time, Saturday, June 6, 2015. Our next episode of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs right here on KMET, 1490 AM. It's great to have you all with us. The phone lines are open. I love callers. We don't usually get them because we are so busy and so quick to run our show that folks don't even want to interrupt because we sprint through this show. We really do. There's so much information, so little time. Down the road, we plan to try to get this thing to 2 hours. But if you do want to call in, 951-922-3532, 951-922-3532. If you get a busy signal, that means all the lines are full, and you just have to call back later on. You can listen on the air at 1490 AM or worldwide at KMET1490am.com. I noticed on my program log I left out the AM part of that. Not that it matters. Anyway, and I've got Alex to my right. Alex, how's the world treating you?
Yeah, just dandy, just dandy.
Oh, boy. And we've got, he's trying to test the waters here. He's trying to see where I'm at, and I'm shaking my head. Jasmius up in Washington.
Yeah, if anybody watching on the Ustream feed probably has motion sickness by now, so you might want to hold that steady.
Oh, stop it.
Because I'm starting to need some Dramamine.
Well, I've kind of played around with the camera here because, Jasmus has always been larger than life, and I felt I needed to be even larger than him on the camera. So, I actually just tried something. There's this, the camera that we have has this motion sensor kind of thing where it follows your face. The good news is I'm bigger and brighter on the camera. The bad news is Alex is outside the picture. Of course, if we maybe get it to follow his face, I don't know.
I got a face made for radio.
Well, right. Mel Blanc, who did Bugs Bunny, was always off camera. So
yeah, could be. So here we don't Jasmine. I know you want to correct that with a better.
No, I'm not.
No, I can see the twinkle in your eye.
He does an excellent Mel Blanc.
Yeah, but anyway. Nullification is our Constitution Corner, our item of the week regarding the United States Constitution. I wanted to bring this up because I met with somebody last Monday, and I brought up nullification, and I was talking with him about it, and he had never heard of it. He was stunned. Well, why aren't the states doing this? What a fantastic tool. Nullification, what that is it borrows on the idea that the states are the ones that, created the authorities, that created the document, the Constitution itself. They are the writers. They are the ones behind all of this. And what that means is that they are the final arbiters of the Constitution. They decide what's constitutional or not. And the problem is, in today's society, the federal government has convinced everybody that they are supreme. The states are just members of a union that they can't get out of. They're there to be controlled. Yeah.
That's the term you're looking for, vassals.
Yeah, vassals of the federal government. Yeah, well, and the thing is, the states are the ones that created this Constitution in the first place. And federal government doesn't even like the idea of nullification because what it means is that if the state finds something is unconstitutional, as the final arbiters, they can refuse to implement or refuse to put into place that unconstitutional law or power. Thomas Jefferson addressed nullification in his draft of the Kentucky resolutions. He said, where powers are assumed which have not been delegated, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy. So, state would just simply refuse to implement the law in question, invalidate the federal law in question, because when something is unconstitutional, when the federal government acts unconstitutional, what it means is they're acting outside their authority. They're doing something they are not authorized to do. And that makes it not only unconstitutional, but makes it illegal.
But by a principle of adverse possession, they have done it for so long. We've allowed them to get away with it for so long that it's become common practice. It's the normal operandi.
Well, because we go back to Chuck Klein's article back in 2012, February 6, 2012, Obama's Fairness Doctrine in Time magazine. And in his final sentence, and I'm paraphrasing, he said that the Constitution was written to unite and control the states. That's what these people believe. The federal government is there to control them. Well, if the states wrote the Constitution, why would they create something to control them? Nullification recognizes that the states are the authors of the Constitution and are a part of the Union on a voluntary basis.
Well, and that's why you have state and local governments being forced to spend more than $35 billion and 75.5 million paperwork hours enforcing laws. I mean, just laws signed by Barack Obama.
Right. It's stuff that the federal government's got no business doing. Now, here's why nullification struggles. Either these people, state legislatures, they either don't understand, they don't realize the power that the states have, as well as the people, or they're part of the problem. They love this big government thing, or they're fearful, and part of that fear would be money. because, we've got a federal government that extorts the states. Hey, if you don't obey, that's okay. You won't get your federal highway funds. You won't get these funds or those funds. And my question is, why are the states giving them that money in the first place?
That was always the purpose.
No, sure, extortion. It's extortion on the grandest scale.
Creating, vassalizing the states, turning them into financial dependence so that they would have that leverage to use on the states.
I asked a patrician Republican one time whether it was ignorance or apathy that was the problem in dealing with this, and he says, I don't know and I don't care.
Earlier when we were talking about video, by the way, if you're listening live and you're online at KMET 1490 AM, if you hit the KMET TV link, then you can watch us do the show. So
Technology is a wonderful thing.
Technology is a wonderful thing. Speaking of video, we're getting ready to start our own video series here at the studio. As a matter of fact, last Sunday I met with some videographers. I've been trying to find some videographers. I've been working with different people, and everybody wants a lot more than I can afford. In other words, money up front. And right now, we're just not in that position. But I think I met a couple guys who might be willing to be down for the cause, so to speak. And it may produce some good video pieces. I got 3 kinds of video pieces in mind. These quick minute things to hammer a point across. A man on the street kind of thing, like Jesse Waters or Mark Dice may do. And then the mini episodes structured in a manner very similar to what you see on TV, with Doug's individual perspective and flair kind of added to it. And then that way we don't have to put in resumes to the network. So all I got to do is send them video and say, see what you're missing out on by not having this guy on your network. So
it's like I say every day during the week on Hard Starboard Radio, nobody is doing what we do on a national level.
Nobody.
Nobody does what we do every Saturday, analyzing events through the lens of the United States Constitution and teaching the Constitution as well.
Alex, when was the last time you heard someone on TV or the radio talk about nullification? Never.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point.
There is a vast untapped market, a hunger for this, like you were talking about. I think it was just last week.
Yeah.
There's an absolute when you were speaking to that Republican. What was that? Riverside Republican Party?
Riverside County Republican Party out in Palm Desert, and I spoke and explained to them what executive orders are and some constitutional concepts, and a lot of those Republicans in that room previously, before they heard me speak, weren't necessarily big fans of mine because of what they heard of me. And then once they heard me, they changed their opinion. And it was almost comical. It was almost like a cartoon. I could almost see the jaws slamming into the floor because they didn't realize the power we have constitutionally. And one of the individuals who didn't used to be a big fan of mine, suddenly he's like, hey, next time you're in town, where I'm, the big kahuna, feel free to stop by. We'll have lunch. This is a person who thought he was my enemy. And here's what I tell people when it comes to the Constitution. Those who have heard of me and heard about what I talk about in the Constitution either love me or hate me. Once people hear me, they either love me or fear me.
It's like that show that just came out on the History Channel called Forgotten History.
Yeah.
And the host bills himself as telling viewers what they were never taught in school. And for as soon as I heard that, I thought, oh, you mean like the United States Constitution, America's Judeo-Christian heritage, things like that? Now, that's not what he's talking about.
We have the real forgotten history on this show.
Exactly.
Speaking of real forgotten history, let's go on, get moving here because we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. And let's talk about real quick, and because I want to spend 5 minutes discussing the answers. The Constitution Quest question of the week comes off of one of the game cards from one of the Constitution Quest games. I urge you to buy it. ConstitutionQuest.com. Put Doug in the discount box. Get yourself a discount. I believe it's 10% right now. Find out from them because they've changed it. After the first year, they changed it. I'll have to get back in touch with them, find out what the exact parameters are. But even if there's no discount, let them know that Doug sent you. But ConstitutionQuest.com, and this is one of the game cards from the game. I have this game. Let me tell you, the artwork is amazing on this thing. I want to buy myself another game so I can put the game board in a frame and put it on the wall. But anyway, Here's the question. During a session and to or from sessions of Congress, members A, may not be arrested for any accusation, B, may only be arrested for treason, or C, may not be arrested except for treason, felony, or breach of the peace. Sean, you want to take a stab at that? Silence. Are you thinking?
Are you there?
Yeah. I don't know if his mic is working.
Yes, Doug. Sorry about that. I think I'm going to go with
I didn't
C
put you to
on
sleep,
that
did I?
one.
I didn't put you to sleep, did I?
No. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You sound
okay,
like a commercial.
great. Thing wasn't going out. I think I'm going to go with C now.
C, may not be arrested except for treason, felony, or breach of the peace. Alex, what do you think? A, may not be arrested for any accusation. B, may only be arrested for treason. Or C, may not be arrested except for treason, felony, or breach of the peace.
I'm going to go with A.
You're going to go with A, may not be arrested for any accusation. What do you think, Mr. Jasmius?
Was that during a session or between sessions?
Both, during a session and to or from sessions of Congress.
I believe that would be A. They cannot be arrested during or to and between sessions of Congress.
It's actually C, may not be arrested except for treason, felony, or breach of the peace. Now,
wow, I got one.
The thing is, we are taught they can't be arrested for any reason.
Aha. See that you learn something every day on Constitution Radio.
But they may not be arrested except for treason, felony, or breach of the peace. In other words, if they're firebombing, the city on their way to Congress, they can be arrested for that.
That's a pretty broad exemption. A breach of the peace could be getting drunk and throwing up on your mother-in-law.
Well, that you call that breach of the peace. I call that a fantasy. Okay,
I call it Saturday night.
Just call it Saturday night. Just call it last Saturday night. No, I love my mother-in-law, and mainly because she speaks Spanish, I speak English. We get along just great. But anyway, but what was the reason? Why do you think they put this in the Constitution? Why do you think?
You could affect the vote if you could cause people not to show up.
Right. So political enemies, if they were able to get someone arrested on the way, that definitely influenced the vote. Well, the vote was influenced with the Sedition Act under Adams. Adams had Mr. Lyons. Well, I shouldn't say Adams. Adams' supporters had Mr. Adams arrested for violation of the Sedition Act, which was a very unconstitutional law, by the way. It basically didn't allow you to speak out against the government. John Adams was kind of a paranoid sort as it was. So Lyons was put in jail, and so, of course, the vote in Congress was affected. But then in 1800, the vote for president was affected. 36 times after, what happened was there was no clear majority on the Electoral College, and no one got the majority, so it went to the House to vote for who would be next president, and they tied 36 times. Then Mr. Lyons was let out of jail. Let's just say he didn't vote for John Adams. And so Jefferson won the presidency by one vote. So next time people tell you that their vote doesn't matter, remind them that in the presidential election of 1800, Jefferson won by one vote. All right, we will be back after the break because we've got an incredible observation of the book, 7 Events That Made America America by Larry Schweikart, presented by Mr. Alex Ferguson himself, so don't go anywhere. What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com.
Hey, do you know about the USA? Do you know about the government? Can you tell me about the Constitution? Hey, learn about the USA.
The Constitution is the instruction booklet for taking back the country. Douglas v. Gibbs.
1787, I'm told our founding fathers did agree to write a list of principles for keeping people free. The USA was just starting out.
Help me fight the good fight. This radio program is funded by advertising dollars. So, if you are a business, add Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs to your business portfolio. If you are a listener, become a patron of the businesses advertising on this program. Without advertising, your weekend dose of truth ends. With more advertising, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs grows, and we will be on the way to win the battle to restore the Republic. To learn more, email us at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com or visit douglasvgibbs.com.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
Welcome back to Constitution Radio right here on KMET 1490 AM and worldwide, KMET1490am.com. We're still working to get our two other stations back. KCXL and WHTH have not re-grabbed this show yet, but we'll get them on those stations in the near future, hopefully. And we've got a lot of other stuff going on this program. But, you know, for those of you who were watching on the television, you could tell I was talking and Jasmine was chatting and all that. We're chatting off camera, off mic. We were talking about you. The fact that you haven't called into the show. So I think it's a good idea right now. Dial in 951-922-3532. What do you think about nullification? Or as we start talking about these different issues of the week, what do you think about those issues of the week? 951-922-3532. 951-922-3532. And you can also call in to tell Alex what you think of his book report, his book review, should I say, on the book of the week. And Alex, it's all yours. What do we got there?
Well, we have a very strange book to me because it has these disparate elements all put together under one cover. The chapters are as different as they could possibly be. Let me run them down to you. You got Chapter 1, Martin Van Buren Has a Nightmare. Chapter 2, The Dred Scott Decision Wrecks an Economy and Hastens a War. Chapter 3, The Johnstown Flood. Number 4, Ike Has a Heart Attack. Number 5, A Steel Guitar Rocks the Iron Curtain. 6 is Ronald Reagan Tries to Keep the Peace and Makes His Biggest Mistake. And 7, Barry Makes a Speech and the Media Gets a Chill Up the Leg. Now, you couldn't have 7 more different chapters inside one book, I don't think.
Wow, from Dred Scott to Obama.
The theme that goes through them all, I think, is the is the subject of newspapers and how the editors handled prejudice, bias, however you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the Martin Van Buren case, he was. I never thought of Martin Van Buren as much of anything. You know, he's just one of those also ran names that you see on the list of presidents.
Yeah, every president has his moment.
Well, this guy was extremely powerful and really affected the United States of America. He was a kingmaker. He was a party maker. And his goal from the start was to keep the subject of slavery from ripping the country apart, which in a way isn't such a bad deal, except it worked out pretty badly for the blacks that had to live under the system. So they had a system prior to him coming along called the caucus system. I'm not sure exactly how that works, except that propertied men would get together and nominate a candidate.
Yeah, the caucus system is even today. Some of these states still use a caucus, like Iowa, and it's kind of confusing. But if you dig into it and you really try to understand it, then you really get confused.
Well, he finally came up with conventions, which most of them engage in.
Mm-hmm.
But where the newspapers come in very early is that there was a spoils system going on that was taken after Garfield got shot. They passed a law getting rid of the spoils system. But Lincoln complained that he spent his whole day interviewing candidates for jobs. It was a way of paying off people who supported you. And
money in politics, who'd have thought?
Who'd have thunk it? So what you end up as well, and we look at Stephanopoulos as an example today. They had a revolving door. They'd choose these people that were big supporters and powerful vote getters. They'd make him the editor of a newspaper, and then after he was the editor of the paper for a while, they'd put him in a plush government job.
So in other words, the modern term for a caucus is the Clinton Foundation.
I like that. I like that a lot. I wish I'd said it.
Yeah. Well, now come on, don't be too hard on the Clinton crime family.
Well, the incestuous relationship here is that the newspapers, by some quirk, were free in the mail, and so they could create enormous amounts of propaganda. Plus, the postmasters could keep track of who got what newspaper, who the enemy was, who the friendly people were.
Right. But so and this book goes over all these things.
It talks about the corrupting influence of money and backroom deals.
Right.
All this kind of stuff. Now, right away, you've got the Dred Scott decision destroys everything. They had used these newspapers to catch slaves. Turned out that by advertising in the newspaper that this slave was missing, you could track him down. The newspapers were also big in the expansion of the territories into the West. They gave away free land. All kinds of economic things were just cooking as long as people were willing to live together with the abominable institution of slavery in their midst. But what happened with the Dred Scott decision was that a bunch of Southern judges, without any justification at all, their reasoning was legendary. It was so bad. They decided that Dred Scott was not a human being. He was property. And because he was property, no matter what he did, the slave catchers could grab him and drag him back. And that started wars in Kansas and Missouri and stuff like that.
That was in compliance with the the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which supported Article 4 of the United States Constitution. So, I mean, they were looking at it from a legal point of view, not necessarily from a just point of view. And Wisconsin now was nullifying that law as an unjust law, not as an unconstitutional law. And that's pretty much what began the states to begin to secede.
Well, the result was that the people, rather than looking to the law to decide the issue, they looked to their revolvers, and there were massacres. You had bloody
that's still
Kansas.
happening today. That's called Ferguson in Baltimore.
The Ferguson effect.
Yeah.
I wish that you guys had used some other term. Anyway.
Sorry.
What we end up with is all these bank loans, all these properties that were being developed began to fall apart, and it turns out that the economy was developed enough at that point that there was a domino effect, and they had a horrendous depression. Nobody had any money. Nobody had any jobs. It was just absolute murder.
We'll change his name to Alex St. Louis. No, Alex.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Anyway, they jumped from that to the Jamestown flood, and you say, well, how could
you got a minute left?
How could that have any effect on what we're talking about? Jamestown is a wonderful example of how private parties can do disaster relief 100 times better than the government can, and they compared that to Katrina, and the incompetence, the people leaving hundreds of buses sitting in the parking lot. It just stack on stack on stack of incompetence.
Well, you want to show, you want to understand governmental incompetence. All you got to do is visit your local DMV.
But when in the Johnstown situation, the local cash register company converted the factory and the offices into hospitals and relief agencies. Donations poured in. People showed up to help rebuild the town. Within a couple of months, they were in the process of rebuilding Johnstown after one of the worst. Well, I think up until 9/11, it was the worst disaster that hit the American public in one blow.
All right, your final thoughts on what made America America.
Well, my final thoughts are that the government is just exactly what Ronald Reagan said it was. The government is the problem. You got another chapter where Ike has a heart attack. He has a heart attack, and suddenly we're in a war against meat and eggs.
Is the book worth reading?
The book is worth reading, but I think it takes a certain organized mentality to fit these disparate elements together and make sense out of them, which I haven't done as well as I would like to. But like I say, you go from from Dred Scott to Ike's heart attack, it's kind of a stretch.
Well, so we got 7 Events That Made America America by Larry Schweikart. That's the book.
Full of fascinating stuff. Every chapter lives on its own.
Yeah, the Dred Scott chapter, there was a few things I felt was a little off on what he was saying, but for the most part, it's a good book. He's a conservative that wrote it. I had given you some books that I thought I was going to have you read last week, and then I came across a book I think you should read. But I don't know if you can do it in a week or if it'll take you 2 weeks. You decide. If for some reason you don't get through it in a week, do 1984 next week, which I know you don't need to read because you've read it so many times that you practically have the book by heart. But
we're living it.
Let me tell the audience the name of the book: America Alone by Mark Steyn.
Columnist to the world, Mark Steyn. Anything Mark Steyn does is gold.
Oh yeah, are you familiar with the book?
Yeah.
Especially considering what we've been talking about regarding Pamela Geller and all that jazz. Okay, The Man Behind the Curtain. That's what I titled this show. This is what we're going to talk about first. We talked about a little bit about it on blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, the show before the show. And once again, if you want to participate in the conversation, you got something to say, you got something you want to tell us, you want to yell at us or agree with us or question us or challenge us, 951-922-3532, 951-922-3532. I know you're out there. I know you want to dial. Do it. The Man Behind the Curtain, we've got Obama said he's the closest thing to a Jew to ever be in the White House.
Who knew?
Do you agree with that, Alex?
I think he's closest thing to the ugly names the Jews have been called over the centuries. But not. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, and he ain't it.
Well, he also says that America is more respected and everything's safer now, thanks to him.
The man is delusional. You wonder. It's always a question of is he completely nuts or is this some kind of plot?
What reality is he living in? Is what Robert Garding said.
It's some kind of bubble. He's not. The whole world tells him don't pull out of Iraq because the terrorists will take over. He pulls out of Iraq and is surprised when they're just nuts.
Well, he's only delusional if nobody is allowed to contradict him. That's really what it amounts to.
Well, the thing is, too, is, they live in this bubble where, they are all things to all people. They are the elite. Only they know what's best. And so not only is the opposition disregarded, it's ignored, and it's considered to be just the rantings of a bunch of crazy or right-wing extremists. It's funny.
He ignores his own party, though. He's surrounded by a tiny little coterie of advisors, and everybody else. The Democrats say they can't get a hold of him.
I was listening to an interview of John Wayne back in 1975, and he was asking, well, who are these new liberals? He says, I thought I was a liberal, but apparently I'm and this is what he says, a right-wing conservative extremist. I thought that was interesting coming out of his mouth.
Ronald Reagan said the same thing. He said, I thought I was a liberal. I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me.
Well, in his book, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say where this Barack Obama declaring himself the first Jewish president came from, that's straight out of his narcissism. Because apparently he was telling former chief campaign advisor and friend David Axelrod, which is, I still say, is the greatest name for a political fixer ever, Axelrod. And Obama was telling him that he said, I am the closest thing to a Jew that has ever sat in this office. For people to say that I am anti-Israel or even worse, anti-Semitic, it hurts. So in his mind, he doesn't think that he's anti-Israel. He's trying to help the Jews by forcing a two-state solution upon them.
No, Ben Carson said that this president, Barack Obama, is pushing us towards war. And under his watch, under Obama's watch, we've got Russia on the move, expanding. We've got China and their islands and their hacking, which we'll talk about in a minute. You've got ISIS and what's going on there in North Korea and the saber rattling. You've got Jade Helm to the point where explosions from an operation actually rocked a town in Michigan.
And Michigan isn't even in the part of the country where this was supposed to be taking place.
Oh, exactly. You've got the Chinese hacking and what they hacked the IRS computers? Is that what they?
No. They hacked the personnel computers of the United States government, and they stole the identities of 4.5 million U.S. government employees. And they're talking about how that can provide all kinds of blackmail opportunities in order to get more. It's an espionage operation in essence.
We've got, Pamela Geller is under threat, calling on all Americans to stand against Islam. You've got ISIS developing chemical weapons. You've got them working their web of whatever they do, even within the United States. You've got Iran building nuclear devices. You've got questions on whether or not we should extend or renew the Patriot Act, which, I understand both sides of the argument. I mean, it's there to protect us from terrorism. At the same time, it goes in many ways woefully beyond I think what the Founding Fathers would intend.
By the way, the Senate passed the USA Freedom Act this week, so that's
like what a Patriot Act wannabe.
It's Patriot Act light. I mean, it strips out Section 215, which was the NSA metadata phone record collecting program. Right. So that's gone. So it's a scaled down Patriot Act, and the next big terrorist attack, it'll be scaled back up again.
Meanwhile, the TSA has a 95% failure rate on checking people coming onto airplanes, and like I said last week, when you appoint people on the basis of politics instead of the basis of competence, this is what you get. Everything. This guy is the reverse of King Midas. Everything he touches turns to manure.
Remember when they said that the private sector just wasn't competent to handle airport security?
When we come back, we're going to talk about Marxists. No, I'm not talking about Putin. We're going to talk about Hillary Clinton and Julian Castro. Yeah. You're looking forward to that, aren't you?
I love it.
All right. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. The spirit of Paul Revere is alive and well and broadcasting on KMET AM 1490. Constitutionalist Douglas V. Gibbs hosts a roundtable of local citizens through local, state, and national issues every Saturday at 8 a.m. Thomas Jefferson said, "We in America do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate." So, participate. Listen to Conservative Voice Radio every Saturday at 8 a.m. and join Paul Revere's modern Ride for Liberty.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Our records indicate you've been lied to. Welcome to the truth. Douglas V. Gibbs.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
You got a dent in your door, a scratch in your fender, or a scratch in your door and a dent in your fender. If you need auto detailing, if you need fire shooting decals on the side of your car, if you need a rally stripe right down the middle of your hardtop, I don't care what it is. The Patriots at All-Star Collision are the place you want to go. They're the only place to go. 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Web address allstarci.com to see all that they do and what they're all about. Phone number 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision, the kings of rock and roll.
And here we go. Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, KMET 1490 AM here in Southern California and worldwide at KMET1490am.com. It is Saturday, June 6, 2015. I am Douglas V. Gibbs. We have Jim, better known as Jasmius, up there in the great state of Washington, and Alex Ferguson. You don't like us referring to the Ferguson effect?
I'm so tired of hearing my name associated with that scandal.
Yeah,
that drives me nuts.
I'm sorry, Alex. I didn't mean it that way.
I'm just waiting for rights to start breaking out into a town named Alex now. Now we say it's the Alex Ferguson effect. Yeah. So.
Well, if Obama and his people have their way, there will be riots breaking out in every city.
That's the ultimate goal, yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Then we can declare martial law and institute Jade Helm.
Jade Shield. Now you're insulting the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement Logistics Division.
Now have we forgotten about Posse Comitatus? I don't know.
Oh, well, there's a thought.
You know, because Posse Comitatus was designed to, came after the Civil War. They wanted to make sure that the American military didn't occupy American land anymore.
Yeah, so much for that.
Yeah, it sounds like another one of those examples.
Posse Comitatus. If you don't know what we're talking about, look it up. POSSECOMITUS. Posse Comitatus. Okay. Time to talk about your favorite female, Hillary Clinton.
Is she female?
Is she female? She is, but she still uses the urinals.
I thought her middle name was Caitlyn.
Caitlyn? No, don't bring Caitlyn. Yeah, talking to Bruce Jenner. Yeah, we don't have the puking sound effect for this show. Yeah, folks, if you want to hear us talk about Caitlyn, go to blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. And intermixed with our discussion is, yes, the puking sound. Okay, the great untrusted Hillary Clinton. Nobody trusts her, including her own Democrats. I wonder why. It's not like she's been, getting rid of more emails than Nixon.
Yeah, the big thing this week, aside from her giving a speech at Texas Southern University Thursday, openly calling for mass voter fraud from coast to coast. Not subtle. She's got to put together the Obama coalition, after all. But this was fascinating and hilarious, because in this speech at Texas Southern University on Thursday, in the run-up to it, now the Clinton campaign claims that they didn't say this, but the university said there will be no opportunities to interview Hillary Clinton. Her speech will be her interview.
Well, yeah, because we want people asking her questions she can't answer.
That's why she goes weeks at a time without even taking questions. I mean,
they record the questions, they prepare her answers, and then she uses them in the speech.
I mean, the way that the media, the hostility. I mean, have we ever seen a prominent Democrat presidential candidate or president treat the media with such hostility? I mean, did they even at this speech at Texas Southern University on Thursday? They even had separate media-designated restrooms. Kind of like colored-only drinking fountains.
Was Fox News invited?
Do we? Yeah, I assume that's a rhetorical question.
I just want to know.
Well, I mean,
I've heard there's been times where they weren't when it came to Obama.
I mean, this is why, and this is another reason why Hillary Clinton is never going to be president, because successful Democrat presidents are, pardon my frankness, ladies and gentlemen, they're media whores. Bill Clinton, you could not keep Bill Clinton away from a microphone. Same thing with Barack Obama. Of course, that's more.
Well, in the case of Bill Clinton, you couldn't keep him away from a microphone or an intern. I saw an image not too long ago of Bill Clinton waving and winking to someone, and his daughter behind him, Chelsea Clinton, says, "Dad, no, that's Bruce Jenner. Don't."
Well, I think the way I put it at politicalpistachio.com this week is that standing between Bill Clinton and a press gaggle was like trying to obstruct Glenn Quagmire from the set of Desperate Housewives.
He knew how to speak to the press. He understood that they were his ally. They're definitely not our ally, and he used them for whatever he needed to use them for. Hillary, the part of the problem with Hillary is not just that she doesn't know how to do that, but that she's in defense mode constantly because there are so many scandals that have popped up, from the Clinton cash to the emails to Benghazi. And for liberal listeners, Benghazi is not a person. She's got all these scandals, so she can't see straight. There's so many things going on.
Well, that's part of it, but I think it's just attitude. There's a reason why I refer to Hillary Clinton as the Empress. I mean, it's just her imperious, above it all of you are
even more so than Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, it's like what Loki said in the Avengers. All you are beneath me. I am a god, you puny creatures, and I will not be questioned by my lessers. That's her attitude. It's a sense of entitlement. It's a sense of just imperious, almost royal prerogative. That's how she.
In other words, she thinks it takes a village, but she realizes also the village is full of a bunch of idiots.
Well,
so she must be so she must be the one who organizes the village and controls the village and makes sure well, in other words, she's a typical Marxist.
That's what she's counting on.
But she has no charm. Bill Clinton could charm the eggs out from under a chicken, and the chicken would never even notice. He was a master at it. If you're going to be a liar and take people's eggs, you better make them enjoy it.
Well, you one of two things. You either better have Bill Clinton's political and interpersonal skill set, or you better have Barack Obama's skin color, because if you don't have either of those things, you are out of luck.
Well, there is one person that does have that skill set. He's an incredible, charismatic speaker, good-looking guy, and maybe not necessarily Obama's color, but heading in that direction, so to speak. And that's Julian Castro. And I've been saying for years, I think Julian Castro is going to be the next Democratic nomination. At worst, he's going to be in the conversation. But, I really think that he may very well be in that conversation for not just as a VP possibility, which is there's been some talk about him being Hillary's VP, but him actually taking the presidency. Because the thing is, the Democrats have realized that sexism, works just fine. The war on women has been a great tool, but the race card works great, and with all these new Hispanics coming into the country, and most of them flooding into Texas, who better than a Hispanic from Texas to flip Texas and regain or keep, should I say, the White House?
Well, I can see the template. The template is definitely the same, but I just don't see it happening this time. And the reason I don't see it happening this time, the biggest difference between Julian Castro and Barack Obama is that Obama came along at the end of one of the most relentlessly vilified two-term Republican presidencies in American history, when the electorate had been primed and prepared and worked into a rabid blue froth. I mean, Charlie Manson could have been elected president in 2008 with a D after his name, but 2016 will be the exact 2016 will be the exact opposite. The end of a disastrous and unpopular, despite the media's best efforts.
I think they're still making it Bush's fault. I think they're still going to use that tool.
Bush is now more popular than Obama.
Yeah,
that just came out that came out this week. So that card's been played out. That's why, you know, we were talked about on American Daily Review. Barack Obama setting up all these wars. Well, he got elected in no small part to an unpopular war, and he's ended our participation in all of them. So the only way to get someone like him elected again is to seed new wars for his predecessor to deal with, so that then Julian Castro can be tanned, rested, and ready in 2020 or 2024.
Well, meanwhile, the person that you've been saying that you thought would be the next president, Elizabeth Warren, or at least the next Democratic nominee, her warriors have given up.
Yeah,
they've walked, and part of it is because she's, you know, not hip with, and this is just a part of it, but she's not hip with the Obama trade deal.
Yeah, I wonder if Barack, because if you recall from all the way to last summer, that you heard talk about how Barack Obama, the Obama Brain Trust had designated Elizabeth Warren as his heir apparent.
Right.
And I wonder if maybe he's subtly sent out instructions to MoveOn.org and some of these other draft Warren groups to pull the plug on their support, because she is not backing off her very loud opposition to the Trans-Pacific trade deal.
Alex, you've been listening to all this. You've been kind of quiet. What do you think?
I'm looking at the cover of this book I reviewed, and the author says that there's been a sea change. That whereas the media has always tried to, well, since the Civil War, has tried to appear even-handed, now they just go all out for the Democrats. And what's happened is, the good news is that the American people do not trust them. They listed the people they trusted more, and among them was funeral directors, car salesmen. You know, they've abandoned the network TV shows. They've abandoned the magazines and newspapers. And it's gratifying to see, but I'm waiting to see what the effect is going to be.
Well, understand this, and I use this in one of my analogies. The left is the current beneath our boat. It never stops. It never gives up. And although I agree, Jasmius, that we are in a situation where there is not post-Bush after they demonize Bush, these people can create whatever out of clay. I mean, they are unbelievable in what way they're able to lead the weak-minded, not uninformed voters around by the nose. It's amazing what they can do. And so even though I agree to a point when it comes to Julian Castro that it's not a post-Bush situation, that won't stop them. They're already trying to demonize all the left. They went after, they're having fun with Hastert, and they're having fun with a few others. Now, granted, Scott Walker, they haven't figured out how to corner him yet.
Well,
they're going to try.
Did you see their attempt to create a huge scandal out of Marco Rubio's 4 parking tickets in 18 years?
Yeah, I saw that.
New York Times did a front-page story on this. That's the best they can do? Really? And that's more than they've gotten on Scott Walker.
Well, when it comes to Marco Rubio, I don't think he's doable anyway. When it comes to the Republican Party, because of his participation in the in the Gang of Eight and immigration and all that.
But I'll tell you what. Now a lot of what we're talking about will Julian Castro jump in against Hillary Clinton and such. Who the Republicans nominate has a whole lot to do with that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Scott Walker ends up with the Republican nomination. Don't be surprised if Marco Rubio is his running mate for precisely that reason, to counter the identity politics advantage that Julian Castro would give a Hillary Clinton ticket.
That would actually be smart, though, and we're talking about Republicans here.
Yeah, I know. That's why I say Republicans will have an influence on this.
Well, the thing about Republicans too, and the conservatives, is we have trouble with these kinds of situations and elections and all that, because we don't think in a collectivistic manner. We are individuals. We have our difference of opinions, and we're so busy beating each other up, we forget that there's an election going on.
Which explains why there are 247 Republican candidates in the race so far.
Yeah, well, and some of them, even though they don't have a chance, I'm glad they're there, because they're going to bring something to the table. Like Carly Fiorina. She can scream and yell and say things to Hillary that nobody can.
Oh yeah, it's the same reason.
So I'm glad she's there, but of course she doesn't have a chance in hell. But she knows that, and then some of them are just trying to establish themselves or whatever. But the fact is, until we start realizing that we've got to work together, we've got to be a team. Someone asked me on Facebook to write an article about how the Tea Party and the Libertarians are battling it out and how it affects the Republican Party. And I told them, I said, I don't spend time on all of that garbage. My main focus here is the Constitution. It's like my article about the TPP, and you said, well, it wasn't really about the economics of it. It was about the Constitution, about the authorities, because that's the way I look at things. I really don't care if they're backbiting and fighting and all that. Stop doing it. Let's get together on the big things like Constitution, like national defense, like getting this economy straightened out, which once again, those two things would be in gear properly if we followed the Constitution. So that's my focus.
To me, the big question coming up is how much are these various candidates going to be savaging each other? Because last time they wounded each other so badly that the Democrats didn't have to.
And we're going to wrap this up now. Final segment, final thing to say, Nuts and Nuggets. I've been trying to bring it back, and I found the quote I wanted, and it's thanks to good old Jasmius with his, this is my last territorial demand in Europe, Putin tells the West article, because Putin said something that really caught my attention. Listen, the Vladimir Putin, the expansionist, hard-line president of Russia said, the world has changed so much that people in their right mind cannot imagine such a large-scale military conflict today. We have other things to do, I can assure you.
Well, what he said,
and then he says, only a sick person, and even then, only in his sleep, can imagine that Russia would suddenly attack NATO. Yeah, because we could trust him, right?
Yeah, well, the operative term is suddenly.
Suddenly,
because he's not suddenly invading Ukraine. He's doing it in slow motion. Insidiously is really the term we're looking for.
And we're out of time. We're done. So, as we always do at the end of the show, Jasmine, plug yourself.
blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, the home of the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And I write at politicalpistachio.com.
Alex?
conservativecannonade.org. Go there or be square.
And my friends, All-Star Collision brought you these stories. All-Star Collision, allstarci.com in Corona. I am Douglas V. Gibbs, politicalpistachio.com, douglasvgibbs.com. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.